The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
Welcome back. It's Free Speech TV's first day of our fundraising pledge membership, whatever you call it, drive. We do these several times a year. It's how we keep this network on the air and keep this show going and all those kind of things, mostly the network. And, you know, we raise enough money to pay the bills for 3-4 months, and we have to come back and raise that money again. We're trying to raise $300,000 over the next 3 weeks. And today we need your help. And, you know, this Free Speech TV is a really, really important part of the media landscape of this country. It's growing. It's growing in a really great way. And because of you. I mean, you've done a wonderful job of telling your friends and telling your neighbors. That is so important. And you know, every 3 or 4 months when we do a fund drive, kicking in a few bucks here and there, you know, that is so much appreciated. And it's what's kept Free Speech TV going and growing. And we hope to continue growing Free Speech TV. And, you know, just a lot of great stuff. The theme of this particular fund drive, at least this week, is Know Your Rights. And with a $60 contribution to Free Speech TV, you're going to get a pocket Constitution of the United States from the ACLU, not unlike one that I use here in the studio. It's a great little pocket Constitution. Everyone should have it. You can, you know, if you're ever bored, you can read it in about 15 minutes. And then we have these 2 Know Your Rights cards from the ACLU. One is Know Your Rights Demonstrations and Protests. And so it's things like, can controversial speech be restricted? No. Officials can impose restrictions such as requiring permits for large groups or limiting the loudness of amplifiers. Any restrictions must apply to all speech regardless of viewpoint. Where can protests take place? Do we need a permit to hold a protest? May I distribute literature without a permit? Can I picket on public sidewalks? Can the government charge fees to protesters? Can counter-demonstrators also protest? If somebody confronts you, a law enforcement officer or something, you got this card, you can say, here's the rules. You can read them. And then similarly for LGBTQ folks, this is You Have Rights, Public and Private Universities, Freedom of Expression, Sex Discrimination, Harassment in Restrooms. And so it's about Know Your Rights. So that's with a $60 contribution. With a $100 contribution, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book I wrote some years ago, but it's kind of a historical context of the United States. And I think you'll find it fascinating. It's absolutely apropos to what's going on today. And in fact, in some ways, it's scary and prescient about what's going on today with Trump and everything else. And it also blows up a lot of misconceptions about the founders that I think are worthy of blowing up, and puts to bed a bunch of right-wing canards. So it's a pretty important book, in my opinion. That's with a $100 gift. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. This is probably the best history of the United States that's ever been written. Howard Zinn has passed away, but his books are still with us, and this is an important one. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of The People's History of the U.S., a pocket Constitution, 2 of these Know Your Rights protest, or 2 Know Your Rights for LGBTQ folks, and a Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get the People's History of the U.S., Howard Zinn's book again, The Voices of the People's History, that's a paperback about Howard Zinn's book, a pocket constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker, and that's with a $360 gift. That can also, a $360 gift can also be given at $30 a month for a year, $240, $20 a month for a year, $120, $10 a month for a year, whatever you'd like. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. And, we'll spend an hour and have a good time. About once a week, somebody comes through here who donated to Free Speech TV, made a $1,000 donation. I've had some fascinating conversations and met some extraordinary people. So that's what we're doing. We're starting the fund drive. Please call 877-378-8669 right now and make your contribution, 877-378-8669. And this is your opportunity to participate in Free Speech TV, to be part of Free Speech TV. You get some swag, too. You get some goodies. But principally, we want to kind of move from thinking about, what are you going to get in terms of goodies, to what are we going to get and do in terms of programming on television that can change the world, that can save the world, that can change the world for the better. We're talking about really serious issues on this program and other programs here on this network: climate change, democracy, autocracy, the loss of democracy, oligarchy, net neutrality. I mean, many of the things that literally don't get discussed on corporate news. So please call now, 877-378-8669. It's our first day. Let's have a bang-up, out-of-the-box first day. Maybe we can even knock this thing from 3 weeks down to 2. Please call now. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. And excuse me just a moment here while I adjust the volume in my ear that is just killing me. I know all my fill-in hosts must be half deaf. It's like I come back, whether it was Sam or Alex, it's... Anyhow, or maybe I have super sensitive ears, but thank you, Sam Sachs, for filling in for me a couple days last week. We were in La Jolla, California I flew out on Wednesday. On Thursday, we spent the day interviewing Dr. Peter Wadhams, who's the world's leading expert on sea ice and is very concerned about the ice melting in the Arctic, converting the reflective nature of ice and snow, the white ice and snow, into the absorptive dark blue open ocean. This is called loss of albedo. Albedo is the reflectivity. And his concern, what he told me on camera in the interview, was this is for this documentary that we're doing on climate change that'll be out probably early next spring. What he told me is that he thinks that the loss of albedo over the next few years, once the Arctic goes ice-free, could equal 50% of all carbon emissions on Earth. So even if we stopped all the carbon, what do we do about that? I mean, this is, and scientists are just like constantly discovering more and more stuff. And in the midst of this, of course, Donald Trump won't even talk about whether he thinks climate change is a hoax. His employees, his staff apparently don't know. It's downright bizarre. And there's I want to talk in this first hour about the power of ideas. The Renaissance, an idea, right? Like it was an idea that came about as a result of arguably the Black Plague, but the death of a third of the people in Europe. But it led to a new way of thinking about the world. 100 years later, or thereabouts, 130 years later, the Enlightenment came about, and from Hobbes to Rousseau to Locke, and to Jefferson, Christianity was an idea by and large. The Crusades, manifest destiny. I mean, look at how. We use manifest destiny as the rationale to commit genocide against the Native American people
an entire group or race of people, for lack of a better word, I'm uncomfortable with that word in such a context, but it was a genocide. So, I suppose it's appropriate. White supremacy, an idea, Nazism, Wahhabism. Right now, you've got the Gulf states. 2 weeks ago, the four of the Gulf states blocked Qatar. They blocked Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is the news channel that comes out of Qatar, and Al Jazeera is famously independent. And these guys don't like independence. And now they're saying that Qatar is like in bed with Iran or something. I think they're objecting to their reporting, frankly. But to the idea of ideas and the impact of ideas to change the world, the core idea that has corrupted, the core idea that corrupted Christianity in the 11th century was the idea that Christianity had to be a militant and military force, and that led to the Crusades, right? This was Pope Urban, as I recall, and off we go, right? Let's turn into a military force. The corrupting idea in Islam right now appears to be Wahhabism and the variations that have come out of it. These are ideas that came out of Saudi Arabia starting about 100 years ago and amplified over generations. And now Saudi Arabia is exporting this stuff all over the world. And we're pretty flipped out about it. And it looks to me like Donald Trump is doing everything he can to provoke an attack here in the United States. I mean, the way he's talking, the way he's responding to the London attack. There's a historian by the name of Timothy Snyder. And Chauncey DeVega wrote a great piece in Salon magazine on May 1st. This was, a little more than a month ago. But I think it's still worth paying attention to. He said it's pretty much inevitable that Trump will try to stage a coup and overthrow democracy. He's waiting for his Reichstag moment. Now, the Reichstag moment for Hitler, of course, was when Marius van der Lubbe burned, a mentally ill Dutch communist, young man, snuck into the building in the night by apparently Hitler's Nazi buddies, and he set a bunch of tapestries on fire, and it burned down the German parliament building. And this Hitler used as the excuse to seize power, to consolidate power, to end democracy in Germany. And it began the rise of Nazism. Is Trump waiting for something like this? Is he looking for something like this? In the meantime, you've got this bizarre idea that the private sector can always do things better than the public sector. Well, there are times when you want the private sector doing things better than, in a different way than the public sector for a different outcome, right? I would much rather have, several companies competing to make my blue jeans than buy them from a government manufacturer, in a government factory. That didn't work out so well in a lot of communist countries. It just, it didn't work out well. On the other hand, air traffic control, talk about natural monopolies. We always go back to this. The commons are the appropriate province of government. And there's only one air traffic control system. And so we're going to privatize that, which means it's going to cost 85% more than it costs right now, because whenever you privatize anything, you've raised the costs by an average of about 80%. Look at what's happened to our military budget since Reagan started privatizing it. And it's just massively exploded. And Trump wants to now privatize the air traffic control system. So, Flight 194, please hold on, I've got to close a pop-up. Flight, you get the, I can't do the lady's voice who sounds like, the woman who answers, she's a voice artist who does, all the airlines and everybody else. But, press 1 to speak to a controller. Press 2 to talk to one of our stockbrokers about purchasing some marvelous stock in our new privatized air traffic control system. Press 3 if you want to complain. We will connect you with our PR department. Is this what pilots are going to be dealing with? Trump said he was going to give us infrastructure, $1 trillion worth of infrastructure. Instead, he goes to Saudi Arabia. They give $20 billion to BlackRock, to a banker, to a bank owned by a guy who is in Trump's administration. And he's supposed to use that to privatize things like what? To buy our air traffic control system so he can make a profit on it? What kind of sick, twisted logic is this? So we've got a bunch of really toxic ideas out there, from Wahhabism to the ways to overthrow democracy to privatization. And then there are some healthy ideas out there, too. There's the idea of democracy. There's the idea of a representative democracy. There's the idea of pushing back on our Supreme Court and saying money is not the same thing as speech, and corporations are not people and do not have human rights. There's the idea of egalitarianism. There's the idea that it's absurd, it's obscene, that half of America is dying broke right now, and half of America, and it's probably pretty much the same half, only not as old, literally cannot withstand the shock of a $1,000 financial crisis, car breaking down, somebody gets sick, whatever. $1,000 is enough to throw half of America into crisis. And yet we have more wealth inequality in this country than our billionaires are richer than they've ever been in history. And our middle class is shrinking below where it was. I mean, it's starting to approach below where it was in the 1950s. Reaganism has really and truly reversed the New Deal, which was, of course, their stated goal all along. Beach, the Buckley versus Vallejo decision that said, yeah, money is free. And welcome back. Dion in Round Lake, Illinois. Hey, Dion, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Yes, given the recent events in London and the tragedy, it looks like England's turning to a police state. The scenes like from the movie V for Vendetta. Do you think Donald Trump is following the Bush doctrine and that his foreign policy would lead it to a direction of new terror attacks across Europe? And do you think he's dying for a Reichstag fire so they can favor him in the polls and maybe postpone the elections like Theresa May?
Yeah, that's essentially what I was saying, is that, he wants his version of the Reichstag fire, and I have no idea what that'll be. For George W. Bush, it was 9/11. And it will give him tremendous political capital if he can provoke, some Muslim group, particularly, ISIS, to stage a large-scale attack in the United States. He's tried to politicize most of them so far. He's trying to politicize the one in England right now. There's no doubt in my mind that, this is how democracy dies. It dies when you get autocrats in power, and when the diversity, the economic diversity, the marketplace diversity, is gone. And the ideas diversity is crushed. And that's happening with the corporate control of our media. And the democracy diversity is, the vast majority of legislation that gets passed is not things that the vast majority of Americans want. It's stuff that a small number of special interests want. It's really just that simple. So, Steve in Phoenix. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hey, Tom, we've got to get our Democratic Party to really start educating the American public on what the Republicans are all about with this little latest salvo of privatizing air traffic controllers. It's just a long line of privatize everything, highways, bridges.
Right. This is Trump's so-called infrastructure plan.
Exactly. We've got to get the Democrats, all of them, at Congress, Senate, all the way up to presidential candidates, to educate the people what it's all about. And we've got to get the rubes who don't have two nickels to rub together to quit voting against their best interest. It's amazing. We've got some friends and family that don't have a whole lot. And what did they do? They voted Republican.
Yeah.
We've got other friends that are doing pretty well and well off. They voted Democratic. They understand it. And some of the ones that voted Republican, you can't some of them it's hard to educate. But we got to keep trying,
Well, the big challenge you have is you're up against a a propaganda machine funded by the billionaire Rupert Murdoch. I mean, you're up against Fox News, and you're up against right-wing hate radio all across the country.
Yeah, it's very hard, and it's really sad because, just like you said, you go in a truck stop or something, people do in Middle America, and there's
Fox News
and stuff like that. And sadly, MSNBC is slanted a little bit more Republican as well by hiring, Morning Joe. He's an ex-congressman.
Oh, and they replaced Steve Kornacki with Nicole Wallace. And,
Nicole Wallace, exactly. And it's, I don't like the direction there. And I certainly hope they renew Lawrence O'Donnell's contract.
I think they did. I think he's announced that they have. He'll be on for another 2 years. But, he's late enough that I'm not sure that he's having that much impact, at least on the East Coast. But it's still, it's good on Lawrence. And I hope he continues doing a good show there. Steve, thanks a lot for the call. Good talking to you. And thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Valerie with Free Speech TV. We're proud to provide you with independent, unfiltered news and documentaries. And as our valued viewer, you can help us continue bringing Free Speech TV well into the future. Join our Pearly Gate Rebels, our planned giving program. Your gift of any size will help ensure democracy endures through an informed citizenry. You can donate property, money, or assets. It's easy. My spouse and I are proud Pearly Gate Rebels. We're doing our part to ensure that Free Speech TV will be here to deliver thought-provoking news and information well into the future. Join us. Call 877-378-8669 or email me at valerie@freespeech.org. Rebel against media owned by billionaires and become one of our Pearly Gate Rebels today.
So, let me get to the source of this story. This was a pretty amazing story over at Raw Story. Let's see here. It was Ari Melber, and he was interviewing the New York Observer's editor-in-chief Elizabeth Spears, the former editor-in-chief. Now, the New York Observer is the newspaper that Jared Kushner bought. You will recall some time back there was a news story where, as his father was going off to prison, another billionaire friend of theirs took Jared aside. Jared was a younger man then, and said, "Here's what you need to do, son. You need to marry a wealthy woman who has prominence and class, who can kind of clean up your act. You need to jump into the real estate business, and you need to buy a newspaper." And so he bought the New York Observer. He bought 666 Fifth Avenue, and apparently had paid twice as much for it as he's supposed to, and apparently he's trying to get the Russian banks to help finance it. And he married Ivanka Trump. So he took that advice, and this is his former editor-in-chief talking about Jared Kushner, talking about his father-in-law not believing in the whole birther thing. Here it is.
I want to read something you wrote about the birtherism that you said at the time that Donald Trump was talking about Obama being born abroad. Quote, "I told Jared I was particularly appalled by his father-in-law's birtherism stance, which I viewed as cynical and racist. He rolled his eyes and said, he doesn't really believe it, Elizabeth. He just knows Republicans are stupid and they'll buy it." Yeah. He really said that to you?
Yeah.
And what did that tell you about Jared Kushner's view of Donald Trump's Republican politics?
Well, I think it told me something about both of them.
Yeah, you think? You got a couple of con artists in the White House. I mean, and the connies are the Republican Party. I mean, when are people going to wake up? There are some ideas that are healthy. There are some ideas that are toxic. I think the Renaissance, I think the Enlightenment, I think democracy, American democracy, it was very somewhat poorly implemented in the early stages. But, we've gotten better over the years. I think these are healthy ideas. I think egalitarianism is a healthy idea. I think the idea that, everybody should have equal opportunity in this land is a healthy idea. I think the idea the simple fact of your humanity, regardless of your physical or mental abilities, should mean that you're entitled to a life that is at least, livable in the United States. You shouldn't be homeless. You shouldn't be without health care. You shouldn't be without food. I mean, and you shouldn't be without education. These should be fundamental rights. Franklin Roosevelt wanted to amend the Constitution of the United States and add these 4 things as a new Bill of Rights. But you're not going to find that, those are the positive ideas. But over on the Republican side, you've got these negative ideas of, as Maggie Thatcher said, there's no such thing as society. There's only a collection of individuals. And now we're hearing that the Trump administration's worldview is there's no such thing as a global society. There are nations competing for advantage. This was a quote from, I believe, Mr. McMaster, his national security guy. And if that's the case, then Ayn Rand has taken over the White House. And that's not a good thing. That's a very scary thing. So anyhow, we've covered a lot of territory here. We'll see how this thing plays out with the privatizing of air traffic control. We'll see how it plays out with what's going on in Qatar right now. I think that has more to do with Al Jazeera than anything else, but I'm not an expert in that region. That's just my relatively informed. Back with your thoughts after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll pick up your phone calls right after this. Stick around. Welcome back. It's Free Speech TV's first day of our fundraising pledge membership, whatever you call it, drive. We do these several times a year. It's how we keep this network on the air and keep this show going and all those kind of things, mostly the network. And, we raise enough money to pay the bills for 3-4 months and we have to come back and raise that money again. We're trying to raise $300,000 over the next 3 weeks. And today we need your help. And, this Free Speech TV is a really, really important part of the media landscape of this country. It's growing. It's growing in a really great way. And because of you. I mean, you've done a wonderful job of telling your friends and telling your neighbors. That is so important. And every 3 or 4 months when we do a fund drive, kicking in a few bucks here and there, that is so much appreciated. And it's what's kept Free Speech TV going and growing. And we hope to continue growing Free Speech TV. And, just a lot of great stuff. The theme of this particular fund drive, at least this week, is Know Your Rights. And with a $60 contribution to Free Speech TV, you're going to get a pocket constitution of the United States from the ACLU, not unlike one that I use here in the studio. It's a great little pocket constitution. Everyone should have it. You can, if you're ever bored, you can read it in about 15 minutes. And then we have these 2 Know Your Rights cards from the ACLU. One is Know Your Rights demonstrations and protests. And so it's things like, can controversial speech be restricted? No. Officials can impose restrictions such as requiring permits for large groups or limiting the loudness of amplifiers. Any restrictions must apply to all speech regardless of viewpoint. Where can protests take place? Do we need a permit to hold a protest? May I distribute literature without a permit? Can I picket on public sidewalks? Can the government charge fees to protesters? Can counter-demonstrators also protest? If somebody confronts you, a law enforcement officer or something, you got this card, you can say, here's the rules. You can read them. And then similarly for LGBTQ folks, this is You Have Rights, public and private universities, freedom of expression, sex discrimination, harassment in restrooms. And so it's about Know Your Rights. So that's with a $60 contribution. With a $100 contribution, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book I wrote some years ago, but it's a kind of a historical context of the United States. And I think you'll find it fascinating. It's absolutely apropos to what's going on today. And in fact, in some ways, it's scary and prescient about what's going on today with Trump and everything else. And it also blows up a lot of misconceptions about the founders that I think are worthy of blowing up, and puts to bed a bunch of right-wing canards. So it's a pretty important book, in my opinion. That's with a $100 gift. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. This is probably the best history of the United States that's ever been written. Howard Zinn has passed away, but his books are still with us, and this is an important one. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of The People's History of the U.S., a pocket constitution, 2 of these Know Your Rights at protest, or 2 Know Your Rights for LGBTQ folks, and a Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get the People's History of the U.S., Howard Zinn's book again, The Voices of the People's History, that's a paperback about Howard Zinn's book, a pocket constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker, and that's with a $360 gift. That can also, a $360 gift can also be given at $30 a month for a year, $240, $20 a month for a year, $120, $10 a month for a year, whatever you'd like. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. And, we'll spend an hour and have a good time. About once a week, somebody comes through here who donated to Free Speech TV, made a $1,000 donation. I've had some fascinating conversations and met some extraordinary people. So that's what we're doing. We're starting the fund drive. Please call 877-378-8669 right now and make your contribution, 877-378-8669. And this is your opportunity to participate in Free Speech TV, to be part of Free Speech TV. You get some swag, too. You get some goodies. But principally, we want to kind of move from thinking about, what are you going to get in terms of goodies, to what are we going to get and do in terms of programming on television that can change the world, that can save the world, that can change the world for the better. We're talking about really serious issues on this program and other programs here on this network: climate change, democracy, autocracy, the loss of democracy, oligarchy, net neutrality. I mean, many of the things that literally don't get discussed on corporate news. So please call now, 877-378-8669. It's our first day. Let's have a bang-up, out-of-the-box first day. Maybe we can even knock this thing from 3 weeks down to 2. Please call now. Thank you so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Steve in Park Ridge, Illinois. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, can you hear me all right?
Just fine, yeah.
Okay. The old saying, those that ignore history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
About 5 or 6 years ago, I read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William Shire, which is 1,100 pages. It's
yeah, I know.
Its own. But I was very curious, how in the world did someone like that come to power in an industrial, educated country such as Germany?
Right.
So a year and a half back, when Trump was running his bully campaign and there were still 16 other GOPs, I started to think, who does this guy remind me of? And I literally called WCPT and I said, people, wake up. This guy is Adolf Hitler in, modern guise.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be proven right or be prescient, but I think now this whole business of the Reichstag could be the coup de grace of a perfect storm of elements in our society, which could let this madman take over the, reins of power of our country.
Yeah. To a larger extent than he already has. Yes, I don't disagree at all. And this is, one of my concerns. It was one of my concerns after 9/11, and I wrote a book about it called We the People, which is still out and still in print. And it talked about the parallels between the way the Bush was responding to 9/11 and the way that Hitler had responded to the Reichstag fire. And that
and part of that, of course, was the Patriot Act and all that kind of stuff. And then let's go to war, et cetera, et cetera. But Bush at least had some. I don't even want to defend Bush. I mean, it's crazy. He went into Iraq after he went into Afghanistan after Mullah Omar offered to arrest bin Laden and hand him over. And Bush said, no, I'd rather have a war. It's more politically profitable. And then he went charging into Iraq, on a lie, and to help out Halliburton and all his defense contractor buddies and to give him political capital. And now we've got thousands and thousands of dead American soldiers, millions of dead Iraqis and Afghanis. And we've got, an entire region on fire as a result of our stupid involvement. So but Bush did not succeed in flipping the United States into a total Nazi state, although he moved us very, very far down that road in terms of the ability of our intelligence agencies to spy on us, the ability to kill American citizens without due process. At least several that's been done to. Some of that happened under Obama. It's just we've come a long way from where we were just 10 years ago or 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I guess, when 9/11 happened. But I think you're right. I think that Trump has Bush at least had some sense of governance. His father had been the head of the CIA, worked for the CIA most of his life. He had been in the White House. Bush had a sense of the White House. He had some kind of sense of history. He was arguably the worst president we've ever had now since Trump, at least. But Trump has the potential to go full something. Whether it's Hitler or whether it's Mussolini or whether it's just who is the Italian buffoon billionaire Silvio Berlusconi, yeah. Whether it's Berlusconi, I don't know. So far, it's been Berlusconi. But he's doing a lot of damage to our country, and it concerns me tremendously. Steve, thanks for the call. Paul in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Paul, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, I was listening to you talk about the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and it reminded me that I've been wanting to ask you this question for a number of weeks, and I keep forgetting to ask you after I came up with it. But it's something I've been running. It just occurred to me, and I've been asking thoughtful people, just running it by to see what their reaction is. And so I thought I'd ask Thom Hartmann. It's a Thom Hartmann kind of question.
Uh-oh.
No, really, it is.
Okay.
So here's the question. This is one of these, you take it how you hear it, and you supply your own definitions, okay?
Yeah.
So essentially the question is this. What modality of thought is most useful? Theory or doctrine?
It's almost a semantic question because I think that those two words are interpreted in different ways by different people. Can you provide me with a context?
Well, I'm interested in what Thom Hartmann thinks. I mean, first of all, let's start with this, because when I asked myself this question, and there's a reason why I'm asking this question, because I think there's a battle.
Well, doctrine is essentially the implementation of theory. Is that not right?
I've heard some people say that, but I look at it this way. First, I started with what's the difference. And in doctrine, I see, for instance, doctrine is as I looked up these definitions, the doctrine is a set of principles which are organized together to form a cohesive general,
But it's typically a set of principles that have real world application.
They may, their application, but the principles themselves are not necessarily truth testable.
Right.
In other words, for instance, theory and doctrine is sort of long-term and unchanging, whereas theory, I was thinking, the greatest minds in the history of the world have had theories that theory is always changing. Theory is always being replaced. For instance, example, Newtonian physics was replaced by Einsteinian physics. Einsteinian physics replaced by quantum mechanics.
Right.
So are we to say that those people didn't have? No, what happens is theory is developable. It's developable, and there's a method for testing its premises, its hypotheses. So whereas doctrine includes principles, theory includes hypotheses,
Right.
which are testable. How do you test the principles of, say, religious doctrine? And the other thing is, is there a method for amending doctrine?
Right.
And then the question came up. Actually, I had this email conversation with this came up with Rebecca Costa, very smart lady. She asked me, "Well, is the Constitution theory or doctrine? Is it rooted in theory or doctrine?" And my answer was, I think it's theory, because there is a method for amending it. We test its hypotheses as to what we really mean by self-governance.
Yeah, now we're getting to something real here. Up to this point, this conversation had been so abstract, Paul, that I'm guessing that people are turning their radios off. But if you're asserting that the Constitution is theory, then you can throw originalism out the window. Because the whole idea of originalism is that the Constitution is doctrine.
That's right.
And theories being testable and theories being constantly recalibrated, those are generally considered positives. Doctrine being inflexible, I'm not sure the doctrine is necessarily inflexible. I think doctrine changes all the time.
Do you have an example of how doctrine changes?
Sure. The way that the United States responded to the Soviet Union.
Is that a doctrine?
Oh yeah, it was the doctrine of mutual assured destruction, and it changed radically when Gorbachev sat down with George Herbert Walker Bush and said, "Okay, let's just change everything." And we didn't say, "No, wait a minute. Our doctrine is that we're going to go to the mattresses." Instead we said, "Okay, we'll change our doctrine relative to the Soviet Union."
Well,
it's probably an imperfect one, but it's the first one that popped into my head.
And it also could be that the word doctrine is used in different ways. But
yeah.
So I look at people, for instance, the people on the right say that, global warming is only a theory. And they look at theory by showing that, these things are, science is constantly being proven wrong.
No, global warming is an actual measurable reality that is explained by a series of theories, and many of them are changing on a constant basis. I mean, I certainly learned that when we went to Norway a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I think that it is the agenda. Let me put it this way: of the right wing, to put us into doctrine-like thinking, that there are principles that you live by, that we state, and they are unchallengeable, and that you're just essentially being.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Paul, but I think we're making the conversation unnecessarily complex by trying to use these two little silos, these two little categories of theory and doctrine, because basically, what the right is promoting is authoritarianism, inflexibility, and feudalism or neo-feudalism. The right makes right, might makes right. That power and wealth from the top down are what should have ruling authority, things like that. Whether those are doctrines or theories, you could argue either one, but I think that inflexibility, and now it's become just totally bizarre. Interesting conversation. Paul, thanks for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Oh, and newsflash, everybody's trying to figure out why Trump tweeted out, trash talked the mayor of London out of context. Well, it's because he's getting his news from out of context places. And welcome back. Let's see here. Diana in Little Rock, California. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Hi. Gosh, I'm so happy to be able to talk to you. I just wondered what your take was. It's like I'm a mom. I have 4 kids and 3 of them are sons. And I'm just thinking, is it too late to quit killing people in the Middle East? I mean, if we just quit killing all those people, bombing and droning, and I mean, women and kids, and that maybe they'd quit terrorizing. I mean, I feel like, just being a mom, if I had people come to my door and drag my sons away, I'd have quite a different view on this whole thing.
Yeah.
But it just seems insane to me that we just keep killing them. So now they're coming at us with knives and cars. I mean, it has to stop. It just has to stop. And I just wonder if you think there's any kind of reasonable to that. I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What has happened, you go back, 50, 80 years, 100 years, thereabouts. Saudi Arabia starts promoting this very hard right form of Islam called Wahhabism. At the same time that in the United States, hard right forms of Christianity are being promoted that justify things like murdering abortion doctors, and or for that matter, blowing up a bomb at the Olympics in Atlanta, and these fundamentalist forms of these religions, it takes root much more strongly in Islam, although in Christianity it is now growing really, really rapidly with the toxic addition of white supremacy into the mix. And so now you've got these groups, and we saw this in Portland over the weekend, these white groups who are, they're white, they're Christian, and they're going to, kick ass is what they're all about. And you've got that dynamic. You've got this kind of religious fervor that's going on, and then on top of that, we're not going after the Christians here in the United States, but there are people. We, the United States, have been killing Muslims in the Middle East for 15 years now, and really it goes back long before that. We overthrew a democratically elected government in Iraq in the 50s. We overthrew a democratic elected government, Mossadegh, in 54 in Iran. We conspired with the Saudis to prevent democracy from happening, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm concerned, Diana, that it's gone beyond the point of no return. That if we just stepped out and stepped back, there would be just this massive bloodbath, and probably the Sunnis would end up winning. It would be sort of like if we didn't participate in World War II, Hitler would end up, ruling Europe. But then within a few generations, they will be overthrown too. And so, it'll eventually cleanse itself. It always does, or typically does. But the question is, how many people die? How much agony and pain is there in the meantime? I just don't think that I don't think the solution of more military is the solution. I think the solution has to be that we're empowering women and girls in these countries, which is something Trump had an opportunity to do when he went to Saudi Arabia and totally blew it. That we are disempowering the radicals, the fundamentalists, and that we're showing a good example in the region. Diana, thank you for the call. It's a mess, isn't it? Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Milton, Ironwood, Michigan. Hey, Milt, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up?
Hey, Tom, I just was wondering, you were mentioning something about Fox News and Rupert Murdoch and his control. There's a network, television news network on. Maybe I'm living in the backwoods too far, but I don't know much about them. It's One American News, and I was just wondering where they came from, if they're a spin-off of Fox News. And
no, this is another.
And if they are, where are they getting all these sponsors to promote all this stuff? Because they do talk down. I know they talked back against Bernie Sanders, and his $15 minimum wage. They had like 15 or 20 dumb reasons why it would be no good for anybody in the country. So
Yeah.
I was just wondering what you know about him.
It's a right-wing news operation that started on the internet that was funded by a bunch of wealthy right-wingers and some right-wing foundations. And, it's very heavily subsidized to the best of my knowledge. And although there's now starting to get advertising and turn it into a real network. And it's just like in radio. I mean, there's probably 6,000 or 7,000 radio stations in this country that are carrying right-wing hate talk 24/7 or most of the day, every day. And there's probably, 30, 40, 50 that are carrying something progressive or even remotely progressive. And you're seeing that same ratio on television. And it's because the big money is always going to support the right-wing message, because the right-wing message is essentially big money should rule. And so, that's one. There's Newsmax is another one that's for a while they were even promoting them on United Airlines. I mean, it's a purchased promotion, I'm sure, but so, expect to see more, of course, there's been no shortage of right-wingers who've gone off and tried to start their own networks. Glenn Beck is probably the most famous. His seems to be faltering, but it may be faltering simply because he tried to grow it too big, too fast. I don't know. But there's no shortage of money for right-wing radio and television out there if you're willing to do it, if you're willing to basically sell your soul to billionaires and corporations. There's no shortage of money. I could be very, very rich if I did that for a living. And I'm not very, very rich, and I'm not willing to do that for a living. But that's what's going on, in my opinion. How are we doing on time? 4.5. Great. Thank you, Milt. Milt, thanks for the call. Or thank you, Troy. Mike in Los Angeles, listening on KPFK. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, just a couple of quick facts about the weekend's unfortunate events in London. The 3 lost souls who committed these attacks managed to kill amongst them 7 persons. That includes running pedestrians down with a van, which makes, in combat terms, a kill ratio of 2.3 to 1. And this morning in Orlando, Florida, another lost soul managed to kill 5 other persons and himself with a gun, which makes a ratio of 5 to 1. So all those Second Amendment extremists who think anyone who has the price of a Saturday night special is entitled to be the militia, I think it cannot be supported that more guns make people safer. Those terrorists, once they disembarked into the Borough Market, were fought by people with beer mugs, unarmed cops with nothing more lethal than a telescoping truncheon, until they were finally taken down by armed police.
Right.
So that's...
And the fact of the matter is, had they had the kind of weapons that you can buy, kind of on the street here in the United States, they could have killed hundreds of people before they were stopped.
Yes, well, possibly at least many more
or dozens,
than they did.
Certainly, yeah.
And in the aftermath, the incredible comments from our putative president made me think back to Britain's dark moments in World War II before the U.S. had entered, when their backs were against the wall. If Roosevelt had issued a statement, keep calm and carry on, that's absolutely horrible. I mean, what's wrong with these people? I mean, it's comparable to that.
Well, I think what happened was that I heard on MSNBC yesterday a commentator say, and I can't independently verify this, that Drudge had a headline early on that said, Mayor of London says, just keep calm, or nothing to worry about, I guess was the phrase. And that Trump, without apparently reading the article or getting any, or calling anybody in his intelligence service. I mean, he's got the most powerful intelligence service in the world at his fingertips. He doesn't seem to use them. He prefers Drudge and Fox. Or also, Michelle Malkin was apparently on Fox a half hour before he tweeted this, talking in these same terms. Taking the mayor of London, who is a Muslim, and his last name is Khan, Sadiq Khan, taking his words out of context and making it look like he was being, quote, soft on terror. This is a serious problem. When the president of the United States is using as his primary news sources
places that intentionally distort the news on a daily basis for political and partisan purposes to the benefit of right-wing billionaires and giant transnational corporations. It's a problem. It's a problem for democracy, and now it's increasingly becoming a problem for the whole world. And
knows our president is a crackpot. That's the unfortunate fact.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'm not sure crackpot is a strong enough word. I think he is a proto-fascist. I think he's a narcissist. I think he is a sociopath. I believe that Donald Trump is suffering from a series of severe mental illnesses and deficiencies that have been largely masked by the fact that he was born with enough wealth that he could surround himself with layers of protection. And he got good enough at conning people, and he brags about this in Art of the Deal. He got good enough at conning people that he was able to get banks to loan him mind-boggling amounts of money, and anybody who he didn't want to pay, he would just bankrupt or refuse to pay. And this is what we've got, and our country is being run now like a giant con job. And now you got Mike Pence going to Iowa. He started his own Pence for President committee, and he's going to Iowa. Barnstorming. It's like he sees the handwriting on the wall. He knows that Trump isn't going to last forever, or at least apparently he thinks that Trump isn't going to last forever. Which brings a whole other issue. Would the Democrats be smart or dumb to impeach Trump right now? I'm increasingly thinking they might be dumb to impeach Trump, but who knows? But this is turning into a real mess. Mike, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for listening to KPFK. We'll be back. Stick around. Michael Oren is going to be with us.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
Welcome back. It's Free Speech TV's first day of our fundraising pledge membership, whatever you call it, drive. We do these several times a year. It's how we keep this network on the air and keep this show going and all those kind of things, mostly the network. And, we raise enough money to pay the bills for 3-4 months, and we have to come back and raise that money again. We're trying to raise $300,000 over the next 3 weeks. And today we need your help. And, this Free Speech TV is a really, really important part of the media landscape of this country. It's growing. It's growing in a really great way. And because of you. I mean, you've done a wonderful job of telling your friends and telling your neighbors. That is so important. And every 3 or 4 months when we do a fund drive, kicking in a few bucks here and there, that is so much appreciated. And it's what's kept Free Speech TV going and growing. And we hope to continue growing Free Speech TV. And, just a lot of great stuff. The theme of this particular fund drive, at least this week, is Know Your Rights. And with a $60 contribution to Free Speech TV, you're going to get a pocket constitution of the United States from the ACLU, not unlike one that I use here in the studio. It's a great little pocket constitution. Everyone should have it. You can, if you're ever bored, you can read it in about 15 minutes. And then we have these 2 Know Your Rights cards from the ACLU. One is Know Your Rights Demonstrations and Protests. And so it's things like, can controversial speech be restricted? No. Officials can impose restrictions such as requiring permits for large groups or limiting the loudness of amplifiers. Any restrictions must apply to all speech regardless of viewpoint. Where can protests take place? Do we need a permit to hold a protest? May I distribute literature without a permit? Can I picket on public sidewalks? Can the government charge fees to protesters? Can counter-demonstrators also protest? If somebody confronts you, a law enforcement officer or something, you got this card, you can say, here's the rules. You can read them. And then similarly for LGBTQ folks, this is You Have Rights, Public and Private Universities, Freedom of Expression, Sex Discrimination, Harassment in Restrooms. And so it's about Know Your Rights. So that's with a $60 contribution. With a $100 contribution, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book I wrote some years ago, but it's kind of a historical context of the United States. And I think you'll find it fascinating. It's absolutely apropos to what's going on today. And in fact, in some ways, it's scary and prescient about what's going on today with Trump and everything else. And it also blows up a lot of misconceptions about the founders that I think are worthy of blowing up, and puts to bed a bunch of right-wing canards. So it's a pretty important book, in my opinion. That's with a $100 gift. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. This is probably the best history of the United States that's ever been written. Howard Zinn has passed away, but his books are still with us, and this is an important one. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of The People's History of the U.S., a pocket constitution, 2 of these Know Your Rights protest, or 2 Know Your Rights for LGBTQ folks, and a Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get the People's History of the U.S., Howard Zinn's book again, The Voices of the People's History, that's a paperback about Howard Zinn's book, a pocket constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker, and that's with a $360 gift. That can also, a $360 gift can also be given at $30 a month for a year, $240, $20 a month for a year, $120, $10 a month for a year, whatever you'd like. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. And, we'll spend an hour and have a good time. About once a week, somebody comes through here who donated to Free Speech TV, made a $1,000 donation. I've had some fascinating conversations and met some extraordinary people. So that's what we're doing. We're starting the fund drive. Please call 877-378-8669 right now and make your contribution, 877-378-8669. And this is your opportunity to participate in Free Speech TV, to be part of Free Speech TV. You get some swag too, you get some goodies, but principally, we want to kind of move from thinking about, what are you going to get in terms of goodies, to what are we going to get and do in terms of programming on television that can change the world, that can save the world, that can change the world for the better. We're talking about really serious issues on this program and other programs here on this network: climate change, democracy, autocracy, the loss of democracy, oligarchy, net neutrality. I mean, many of the things that literally don't get discussed on corporate news. So please call now, 877-378-8669. It's our first day. Let's have a bang-up, out-of-the-box first day. Maybe we can even knock this thing in 3 weeks down to 2. Please call now. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And it doesn't seem like we can get through to Michael Oren. So, we'll talk about a few other things here that are in the news today. This thing about, I'm surprised it doesn't have more legs. You know, it's like if Hillary Clinton had confided in a friend that she thought Democratic voters were stupid, it would be at the top of Drudge. It would be all day. It would be plastered all over Fox News. It would probably even be plastered all over CNN and MSNBC. But the fact that Jared Kushner told his coworkers that Trump knew that birtherism was a lie, but the Republicans were stupid and they'll still buy it, is getting virtually no press in the United States. It's pretty astonishing to me. It's also coming up on the 50th anniversary of the 1967 war. And Dr. Michael B. Oren is with us. He's an Israeli historian and author, former ambassador of Israel to the United States, now the Deputy Minister of Diplomacy for the country of Israel. His website on Facebook is Ambassador Oren, O-R-E-N. And you could tweet him at Dr. Michael Oren. Dr. Oren, welcome to the program.
Hey, good to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. A couple of interesting pieces in the New York Times over the weekend. One suggesting that in 67 and the 67 war, there was actually debate about detonating a nuclear weapon, as I recall, up on the top of Mount Sinai or some highly visible place, by way of saying to the Egyptians and others who were attacking, back off. A variation, I suppose, of what one of the theories about why Harry Truman dropped the second bomb in Japan, some would even say the first, was not so much to end the war, but to warn off Joe Stalin. What are your thoughts on that? On the former, not the latter.
My truth is that it's not true. But I spent 4 years researching the Six-Day War for my book, 6 Days of War. And I went to every archive pretty much in the world that's relative to the war. Moscow, Paris, London, Washington, the Johnson Library in Austin, the Israeli archives, Cairo, Jordan, Syria, you name it. There is not a shred of suggestion that Israel had military nuclear power in 67. And if it had, believe me, President Johnson would have mentioned it to Avi Even, Israel's foreign minister, when he was at the White House in late May of 1967. He doesn't. They have a detailed protocol of all those meetings. And there's nothing suggested in the protocols of Israel's own government, and it would have been in the protocols. So it's not there, and the report, frankly, makes no sense. Israel was going to deliver a nuclear weapon with a helicopter, according to this report, to a place that was very, very near the Israeli-Egyptian border, which also wouldn't have made any sense. So it's not, and I think it's an attempt to sort of, in a certain way, a six-day war denial. What six-day war denial? Israel went to war because it believed it was facing an existential threat. And if someone says, well, Israel had a nuclear weapon, then Israel didn't face an existential threat. And it's a type of sophisticated denial. But to the best of my knowledge, and I think I'm fairly knowledgeable about this, it isn't true.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Israel's official position is we're not talking, but you're there, you're part of the government. How many nuclear weapons does Israel have now?
Well, Israel will say, it has said since the early 1960s, it's been very consistent, it will not be the first country to introduce nuclear weapons to the Middle East, and we mean it. I'm a member of the government. I'm talking about this because I happen to be, for better or worse, the expert about the Six-Day War. This claim that Israel had nuclear power is based on the testimony of one man who was convicted in Israel of breaking security restrictions.
So you're saying that Israel does not have nuclear weapons now?
I think Israel would not be the first country to introduce nuclear weapons to the Middle East. That is our position, and it will remain our position.
Does that mean that Israel doesn't have nuclear weapons now?
This reminds me of the conversation.
I'm asking a very straightforward question, and what I'm hearing back is legalese.
Straight former. You could ask me again and again. You're still going to get the same answer. Israel will not be the first.
Are you asserting that another country in the Middle East has already developed a nuclear weapon?
I'm certain that Israel would not be the first, and certainly there's been another country, Iran, which has had a clandestine nuclear program, for 30 years and lied about it systematically. And Israel believes, not only Israel believes, that there was a military component to that program. And it may have been delayed by this nuclear deal, but we're still prepared for the possibility that when the deal expires between 10, 15 years from now, and the same regime is in power, it will have both the capacity and the legitimacy to enrich enough high-enriched uranium for many dozens of bombs. And we have to prepare for that possibility.
In other words, develop a nuclear weapon for Israel.
We can take many measures. We hope that it will be measures that don't involve resorting to any type of military action. The one way we can begin to do it now is by, keeping Iran's feet to the fire, and certainly making a connection between Iran's abysmal behavior in the region. It's the world's largest state sponsor of terror. It's been complicit.
How can you say that when Saudi Arabia has been exporting Wahhabism for 4 generations now, 5 generations?
Well, I'm certainly not going to exonerate the Saudis. They have been exporting Wahhabism, and individual Saudis have supported.
But Israel rarely calls them out. Israel constantly calls out Iran. I don't get it.
Well, it's not just Israel. The United States has designated, by the way, under successive administrations, has designated Iran the world's largest state sponsor of terror.
That doesn't make it so.
That doesn't mean there aren't other state sponsors of terror. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. But Iran's the biggest, and Iran is the only government that we.
Well, you're certainly taking the kind of Donald Trump position here. If my understanding is correct, after the marathon bombing, or the killing at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, that you had gone on Israeli television and said, and I quote, "If I was Donald Trump, I would have come out the minute that the FBI started to indicate this morning that we were talking about a guy who was operating from Islamic motivations. Just his name alone, a Muslim name, the son of Afghan immigrants who apparently maintain connections to some sort of extremist Islamic organizations. That in itself will greatly influence the presidential race." How is this useful? Demonizing Muslims.
I was on an Israeli talk show, and they were saying, okay, well, how are the different candidates going to react to this? And I said that Donald Trump would come out the next day and say, this is the topic of Islamic extremism.
You said, if I was Donald Trump, I would have come out the next day.
And you know something? I was right. It's exactly what Donald Trump did. The rest of that quote is what I said Hillary Clinton would say. And I was right on that, too, because I'm a close observer of American politics. It does not mean that I was advisor to Donald Trump. It doesn't mean I was advisor to Hillary Clinton. I was an analyst for Israeli television. And in that case, my analysis was spot on. I don't know, make of it what you will.
Yeah, okay. The Palestinians have been stateless and occupied for 50 years now. Do you support full civil rights, equal civil rights for Palestinians now under Israeli control? And if not, how is it not apartheid?
Well, first of all, I think your distinction between not having civil rights and apartheid is a false and very dangerous and ultimately insulting.
How can you disentangle the two?
The actual sufferers from apartheid. The victims of apartheid were people who had separate bathrooms and separate restaurants and were not let out to certain professions. 90% of the Palestinians in the West Bank come into no contact with Israelis whatsoever. They could hold elections if they wanted to. They have a corrupt, unelected leadership that doesn't want to hold elections because they know they'll lose to Hamas. The Palestinians have been offered statehood more frequently than any other people in history, and have turned it down, and have turned it down most frequently.
Wait a minute. Let me try to understand this. You're suggesting that in South Africa that there was more contact between blacks and whites
and then the blacks couldn't use white facilities, and that is your definition of apartheid. But the reality, that I recall was that there were large parts of South Africa where blacks were basically locked in. I mean, Soweto is the most famous, and there was no contact, and the principal instrument of apartheid was the oppression of people based on their race. How is that different than what Israel's doing right now?
But that's, I mean, I don't know where to begin. I mean, 150,000 Palestinians work in Israel every day. They pass to a border area. They pass very quickly, between 4 and 7 minutes, and they can use any bathroom, and they can go to any
150,000 out of how many people who are in the occupied territories?
Who want to work. Anybody who wants to work can come in and work. And, it's not an ideal situation, and we want to negotiate with the Palestinians. We're waiting to negotiate with them for 8 years. They won't negotiate with us. You got it backward. We made the offer of statehood to them, and they turned it down. You got it backward. And
so the Palestinians are the ones who are creating the apartheid.
It's not. Again, no one's guilty of apartheid. I don't want to use the word. It's like using the word
because I don't know how else to describe it. I've probably spent 6 months of my life in Israel. I'm very familiar with your country. I've traveled all over it. I've been there repeatedly since 1978. I helped create what is now a fairly large institution in Israel. My first language is Yiddish. One of my very closest friends lives in Mea Shearim. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, try to work on it. I think the way you sound is like some of my best friends are black. Some of my best friends are Israeli.
Well, what I'm trying to say is I'm not completely unaware of the situation. You're asserting that I don't know what apartheid is.
Let me give you one example. I'm a member of Knesset. Okay? There are 120 members of Knesset. Of the 120 members of Knesset, 15 of them are Arabs. Is that apartheid?
They are Israeli citizens.
Do they use different bathrooms than I do? Do they not have? Does their vote count any differently than my vote counts?
They are Israeli citizens.
Argument.
But what about the people living in Gaza and in the West Bank?
Well, in Gaza, they're under the control of Hamas, and they're basically an independent state, but they're a terrorist state under Hamas. What can we do? Israel pulled out in 2005. We ripped up 21 settlements. We gave them independence, and they used their independence to create a terrorist state. That's a fact. On the West Bank, situation more complex. Yes, it's divided into 3 areas. Area A is under complete Palestinian control, both security control and civilian control. Area B is under Palestinian civilian control and Israeli military control. Area C is under Israeli control. So you can't even generalize about the West Bank. It is not a perfect situation.
Yeah. You're right. It is a complex situation. Dr. Oren, we're out of time. We're hitting a hard break here. I'm sorry. Hold on just a second.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Dr. Michael Oren is Israeli historian and author, now Deputy Minister of Diplomacy for Israel. Facebook.com/Ambassador Oren. Thank you, Doctor. Welcome back. Paul in Chicago. Hey, Paul, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi. As you know, Kathy Griffin caught a lot of flack for the tasteless picture of her holding a bust of Trump's decapitated bloody head.
Yeah.
But the picture speaks volumes if you reference the French Revolution. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette autocratically ruled France. The aristocracy possessed all the wealth, and everyone was starving. The queen said, "Let them eat cake," a mixture of flour, bugs, worms, and dirt, when she was told no one had any bread to eat. Both she and Louis were captured and beheaded, initiating a period of lawlessness and anarchy. Now, Trump's Republican vision for trade, labor, taxation, health care, and the environment is a bunch of let-them-eat-cake policies which make the rich monumentally richer and throws everyone else and the environment under the bus. But we don't behead our out-of-touch, greedy, and uncaring politicians, nor is there any need for anarchy or violent revolution. Any president who's committed crimes or has damaged our nation can be removed by the impeachment process if the vice president and 5 cabinet members can claim he's unfit to serve, or if he's lost the support of enough legislators, they can be pressured into stepping down, which is why Nixon resigned. and every 2 years we have the opportunity to vote them out of office.
So, Paul, is your suggestion that Kathy Griffin's biggest mistake was not having a guillotine as a prop in this picture? Because I think a lot of people immediately went to ISIS beheading people rather than Maximilien Robespierre and the guillotine.
Well, I just think that she's trying to warn the American people and Trump that this is how we used to do things, and you're lucky that we don't do things this way anymore. I mean, I don't want Trump beheaded. I just want him to get out of politics, go back to his Trump Tower, and keep his foul mouth shut.
Yeah.
Or better yet, I would love to see him wearing clothes that perfectly match his hair and complexion. An orange jumpsuit with a number painted on it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty unlikely. But, we'll see. We'll see. But, you realize Kathy Griffin is apologizing like there's no tomorrow. I mean, she lost her gig on CNN for New Year's Eve this year as a result of this. It may have been a fatal blow to her career.
That's true. I guess in this case, no publicity is bad publicity doesn't apply. And what bothers me is that Trump's youngest son, Barron, was very much upset by this, and he's an innocent in all of this, so he didn't deserve that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and conceivably it would have been possible to keep that away from him, but who knows? I mean, yeah, it's not something I would have advised her to do. It's like, oh man. Paul, thanks a lot for the call. And thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Cliff in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Cliff, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for being you and doing what you do. I just wanted to offer this up. You had a conversation a couple of weeks back, I missed you last week, about the Confederacy and, their traitorous attitude toward America. And you were comparing that with in Germany, how, you walk around and throw your hand up and say Heil Hitler or whatever, they'll throw you in jail.
Right.
I'm just want to get your thoughts on this. Germany paid a very, very high cost for what they had done. And I think that the issue and the problem is America has not
I agree.
paid for what they did.
In fact, America is still benefiting from white supremacy. I mean, at least white people in America.
Exactly. So I think that it would be it would be more like Germany. They need to be made to feel the consequence of what was done, and that is a deterrent. And I think the attitudes in Germany is a result of the price that they had to pay for what they've done. America has not ever paid for what they did.
Yeah. So what, Cliff, would you suggest the payment should be?
Well, I think the institutional racism is the crux of the problem. A lot of people, just my opinion, but I think a lot of black people would like to have the argument about paying taxes if they were making enough money from a job to pay taxes. When you have this old boy network that's going on where you could be doing the same job as your white counterpart, but they don't want to give you the same pay as if you don't have a family.
Or the same opportunities for advancement, et cetera. Yeah.
Or the same, exactly. So, I mean, and then they want you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps when you can't even afford a pair of boots.
Isn't the we last week, I believe it was, that we played the clips from the mayor Mitch Landrieu of 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, I've been traveling so much, I've lost track of time. Mitch Landrieu taking down the monuments to Robert E. Lee in New Orleans, and it seems to me like a really important starting point. We can have conversations about reparations and things, and I'm fully supportive of both those conversations and the concept. But it seems like a really important starting point is taking down all these monuments to white supremacy.
Absolutely. I agree. But then you have in, I believe it's Mississippi or one of those other southern states where they've actually enacted laws against removing.
Yeah, it's Alabama. They just did that the week before last.
Alabama. Okay, so I mean that it's ridiculous that there has been no real consequence for that attitude in this country. What the solution is, I mean, we could brainstorm about it all day, I'm sure. I don't think any particular monetary number would change things outright, but I think behaviors need to be really, really scrutinized.
Well, I think the other point that you started out with is a really important one, and that is that the average German, and I'm talking not a non-Jewish German, the average Christian white German, suffered terribly as a consequence of World War II. In other words, basically just having the crap bombed out of them and having pretty much everybody had somebody in their family killed as a result of World War II. And so they were committed to making sure that this never happened again. And that commitment lasts till this day. The average white person in the United States has not borne any downside. In fact, has borne considerable benefit from white supremacy in the United States. And I think that's why there's not a movement to try to stop it.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I mean, it's a really fundamental difference, between all the German suffering, and it is not to minimize the Holocaust or anything like that, but the people who are still around and us. Welcome back. It's Free Speech TV's first day of our fundraising pledge membership, whatever you call it, drive. We do these several times a year. It's how we keep this network on the air and keep this show going and all those kind of things, mostly the network. And, we raise enough money to pay the bills for 3-4 months and we have to come back and raise that money again. We're trying to raise $300,000 over the next 3 weeks. And today we need your help. And, this Free Speech TV is a really, really important part of the media landscape of this country. It's growing. It's growing in a really great way. And because of you. I mean, you've done a wonderful job of telling your friends and telling your neighbors. That is so important. And every 3 or 4 months when we do a fund drive, kicking in a few bucks here and there, that is so much appreciated. And it's what's kept Free Speech TV going and growing. And we hope to continue growing Free Speech TV. And, just a lot of great stuff. The theme of this particular fund drive, at least this week, is Know Your Rights. And with a $60 contribution to Free Speech TV, you're going to get a pocket constitution of the United States from the ACLU, not unlike one that I use here in the studio. It's a great little pocket constitution. Everyone should have it. You can, if you're ever bored, you can read it in about 15 minutes. And then we have these 2 Know Your Rights cards from the ACLU. One is Know Your Rights Demonstrations and Protests. And so it's things like, can controversial speech be restricted? No. Officials can impose restrictions such as requiring permits for large groups or limiting the loudness of amplifiers. Any restrictions must apply to all speech regardless of viewpoint. Where can protests take place? Do we need a permit to hold a protest? May I distribute literature without a permit? Can I picket on public sidewalks? Can the government charge fees to protesters? Can counter-demonstrators also protest? If somebody confronts you, a law enforcement officer or something, you got this card, you can say, here's the rules. You can read them. And then similarly for LGBTQ
folks. This is You Have Rights, Public and Private Universities, Freedom of Expression, Sex Discrimination, Harassment in Restrooms. And so it's about Know Your Rights. So that's with a $60 contribution. With a $100 contribution, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book I wrote some years ago, but it's a kind of a historical context of the United States. And I think you'll find it fascinating. It's absolutely apropos to what's going on today. And in fact, in some ways, it's scary and prescient about what's going on today with Trump and everything else. And it also blows up a lot of misconceptions about the founders that I think are worthy of blowing up, and puts to bed a bunch of right-wing canards. So it's a pretty important book, in my opinion. That's with a $100 gift. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. This is probably the best history of the United States that's ever been written. Howard Zinn has passed away, but his books are still with us, and this is an important one. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of The People's History of the U.S., a pocket constitution, 2 of these Know Your Rights at protest, or 2 Know Your Rights for LGBTQ folks, and a Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get the People's History of the U.S., Howard Zinn's book again, The Voices of the People's History, that's a paperback about Howard Zinn's book, a pocket constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker, and that's with a $360 gift. That can also, a $360 gift can also be given at $30 a month for a year, $240, $20 a month for a year, $120, $10 a month for a year, whatever you'd like. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. And, we'll spend an hour and have a good time. About once a week, somebody comes through here who donated to Free Speech TV, made a $1,000 donation. I've had some fascinating conversations and met some extraordinary people. So that's what we're doing. We're starting the fund drive. Please call 877-378-8669 right now and make your contribution, 877-378-8669. And this is your opportunity to participate in Free Speech TV, to be part of Free Speech TV. You get some swag too, you get some goodies, but principally, we want to kind of move from thinking about, what are you going to get in terms of goodies, to what are we going to get and do in terms of programming on television that can change the world, that can save the world, that can change the world for the better. We're talking about really serious issues on this program and other programs here on this network: climate change, democracy, autocracy, the loss of democracy, oligarchy, net neutrality. I mean, many of the things that literally don't get discussed on corporate news. So please call now, 877-378-8669. It's our first day. Let's have a bang-up, out-of-the-box first day. Maybe we can even knock this thing from 3 weeks down to 2. Please call now. Thank you so much.
Hey, want to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights. Hartmann Program and see video of our entire 3-hour show over at patreon.com/Thom Hartmann. Welcome back. As I stretch. Oh, my. That's interesting. Israel and Palestine conversations here. Patty in Wilmette, Illinois. Hey, Patty, thanks for listening to WCPT. What's up?
I was shocked. Over the years, I'm a solid Democrat. I listen to you. I think highly of you. And then I hear you basically bully Michael Oren.
Right.
And first with the nuclear, it sounds like you're out of touch and have swallowed the BDS venom that has now become popular in Democratic Party. First of all, as you know, Israel is surrounded by 22 Arab countries, mostly enemies. They have, since their beginning, 1948, had to fight literally for their existence. That's why their army is strong today, because they have to fight every day. Citizens, too. And I know you know about constant suicide bombers that come in, all, Israeli citizens, people who live in East Jerusalem, people from the West Bank, all come in with their knives, with their cars, with their bombing buses, and have killed so many citizens throughout the years. And I'm hearing you talk about issues without giving Palestinians or asking for their accountability. You know, they have martyr squares, they have insightful media that constantly calls for destruction of Israel and killing innocents, and they also teach in textbooks to hate Israel and to destroy Israel. And coming from an educated person such as you, I was absolutely shocked. This is the first
Well, everything
time
you said is true, Patty. Everything you said is true. And as I said, I think that the major exporter of this sort of vitriol is Saudi Arabia, not Iran. But although Iran is no wonderful guys in the neighborhood. But the fact of the matter is that when I first started going to Israel in the 1970s, I could drive all over the country. In fact, I frequently did. I would take friends over there, and we would drive all the way down to Jericho, go all the way up to the Galilee. Go over to Mount Carmel, come down the East Coast. I literally take people on tours of the country. And now the country has turned into an armed camp. And it is not, in my opinion, entirely the fault of the Palestinians. Although I would give you that Yasser Arafat was corrupt. Yasser Arafat not only missed several opportunities to help his own people, but actually sold out his own people on a couple of occasions. And these have been well documented. But what's going on in Gaza right now, and frankly, the latest settlement where Palestinian land was literally just the government just authorized the taking of it, I think is wrong. Now, I'm not supporting the BDS movement, if that's what you're suggesting.
Every issue that you had mentioned is in line with BDS.
I understand that.
Everything you have mentioned, you're talking about apartheid, that came originally from the BDS movement. So you've just
no, it didn't. The discussion of apartheid has been going on since 1955.
He coined it. Yes, he coined it. That was all around. BDS.
Who coined what?
He coined the term apartheid as far as the West Bank and Gaza was concerned.
Who did?
Jimmy Carter's book. Remember, he came out with the book.
Oh yeah, I remember that. But that's not when it started. There was discussion about apartheid in Israel. I mean, since the founding of Israel, because it essentially, there was this question about what do we do with these Palestinians who are here.
Wait, could I ask you a question?
Certainly.
Do you see Palestinians having any accountability, like with their terrorism, their insightful media, teaching to destroy Israel, teaching to hate Jews, teaching to hate Israelis, paying all the suicide bombers' families money?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all terrible.
These horrible acts of terrorism.
I think it's all terrible. I also don't believe that is number one. The majority of Palestinians. I think the majority of Palestinians would just like to have a job and get on with their lives. And frankly, I've known a few Israelis who think that Palestinians are subhuman. Literally, I've had that phrase expressed to me: a subhuman race. But there are some problems on both sides. There are absolutely a lot of problems on both sides, and it is as Michael Oren was pointing out at the end of our conversation. And I'm sorry he got cut off. I genuinely there's a point at which I can't go any farther on a break before the machine just takes over. And he was making his point about, well, yeah, we've got the West Bank divided into these different zones, and they have different levels of freedom and all that. But it still, to me, looks like apartheid. And I think that Israel should do something about that. And I think that we should be playing a role in that. And I don't think that Donald Trump is being constructive in playing a role in that. I don't think that, frankly, I think Jimmy Carter was the last president who actually really made a sincere effort to play a role in that. With the Camp David Accords.
I think Jimmy Carter was destructive in using that word, which I don't want to reiterate. I think that's just like a popular, bogus word. I think they are in a very tough place, Israelis, because they have to defend their little tiny country surrounded by terrorists. They've got Hamas, they've got Hezbollah, they've got the Palestinian terrorists, coming out of the West Bank, East Jerusalem. They're constantly on guard. Yeah. That becomes a very funny kind of democracy. It's a militarized democracy.
Oh, I've been there.
It's not the kind of democracy we get to live in. We're not looking over our shoulder.
You're right, Patty.
And terrorists, and I don't think you appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to move along. Benjamin in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, Benjamin, what's up?
Yes, nice to talk with you. I would like to hear your comments on, especially from this last lady, about the the Israelites on the Torah, on their Bible, way back before 1948, before the British Mandate. The Israelites invaded at least 10 nations way back.
You're talking about 3,000 years ago?
Yeah, and under Joshua.
Wait a minute. You're gonna, Benjamin, let me get this straight. You're upset with Israel because 3,000 years ago a tribe, invaded a bunch of other tribes? I mean, there are no people on earth who don't have a history like that.
Yeah, but I'm not upset with Israel. I am Brazilian. But the history says that Israel invaded at least 10 nations way back.
Right, and they got invaded a few times, and they got enslaved a few times. I mean, what does this have to do with anything?
Well, what the Palestinians is doing is just defending themselves, defending the land that Israel took from them.
I think for many of the Palestinians, that is true, and that's their perception. I think for some of the Palestinians, they grew up on this Wahhabi exported idea that Jews take Arab blood for matzah and all this other kind of crap, and they believe and promote this very virulent form of anti-Semitism in the region. And that is, we started out the show talking about the power of ideas from the Enlightenment forward. And those ideas, those concepts, those beliefs, they're still being promoted. They're still being promoted by mosques and imams and publishing companies that are supported by Saudis. And not just Saudis. I mean, in many of the other Arab states in the region. And they're directing their vitriol against Jews broadly and Israel specifically, and I condemn that. We are feeding. Donald Trump just went over and gave Saudi Arabia $300 billion worth of weapons, and I would say this is one of the major promoters of anti-Israeli violence in the world. It's just anyway. Benjamin, thank you for the call. I don't need to go back to the Bible or to the Torah to try to figure out the history of what's going on right now. Yeah, there's been conflict for a long time, but it's time to clean this thing up. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back. We're going to check in with Talk Media News, and we'll be back with more of your calls. And welcome back. Jack in Arlington, Virginia. Hey, Jack, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. I hear you guys talk about a lot of international issues and everything else, but one issue that I haven't heard much about, in either in the mainstream media or locally, is a legal wiretapping that's going on in the United States through our federal government and local governments, using devices such as Stingray and other devices to listen into average citizens.
Yeah, I've talked about this on a number of occasions. In fact, I think we were probably one of the first programs to point out a story. It was actually in the conservative press here in town. I think it was in the Washington Examiner, that there are at least 18 of these Stingray devices here in Washington, D.C.
Right. And what has been done in the legislative or local laws to prevent that from happening?
To the best of my knowledge, nothing. I think that Ron Wyden has brought this up. I could be wrong, but Ron Wyden is generally very, very good on privacy issues and law enforcement issues. I think it's extremely problematic. The ability of these devices not only to listen into conversations and find people and triangulate people. I mean, if that's all they did, and they did it with a warrant, I wouldn't have a problem. But the ability to actually get inside the guts of your phone and pull all the contents out and things like that, and if we have these things and we're passing them out like candy to police departments around the country, they're all over the world. And they're going to be, the more repressive regimes around the world are going to be using them aggressively. What did you just say? Yeah, a minute and 30 seconds. Jack, I got to move along, but thanks for the call. It's an important point. It really is. John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, dogma and politics?
Yeah, I wanted to mention a bit about Israel, too.
You have a minute and a half.
I really dislike when people are reflexively supportive of Israel without talking about anything that they do wrong. And I also know many Palestinians, and I have to say, I've also know some Russian Jews that refer to Palestinians as cockroaches.
Yep.
So, there's a lot of bigotry, a lot of prejudice. Ashkenazi Jews are on the top, and Jews from Ethiopia are not treated fairly. They, like any other country, including this one, can be criticized. So that's for, the other caller. But I wanted to talk about dogma. I think the root problem with what's going on today is, just the dogmatic view of political economy and just certain precepts that we've accepted that go absolutely unquestioned. And I think, I come from a very conservative religious, background. I'm an Orthodox Christian. So, we call it translates in Greek, our holy despot. And I accept that in religious terms, that we have these people who are over us and they protect our dogma because they're talking about something that is so abstract and cannot be proven. And, but when it comes to politics, there was a big break, and that was us in our revolution to break from the dogma of church and state. And I think it's good for religion, too, because there's just such corruption when religious, power gets involved with state power.
Agreed. John, we're out of time. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and let's check in with Talk Media News. Brought to you by Ellen Ratner's new book, Loving What You Do, The Elements of a Great Working Life, and goatsfortheoldgoat.com. On the line with us, Victoria Jones. Hey, Victoria, happy Monday.
And happy Monday to you.
So what's going on in the world today?
Well, quite a lot. We'll start over in Britain. Police in London have named 2 of the 3 suspects in the van and knife attack near London Bridge on Saturday night that left 7 people dead. London police said 27-year-old Huram Shahzad Butt was a British citizen born in Pakistan, and Rashid Redouan has claimed both Libyan and Moroccan nationality, possibly 30 years old. They were both from the Barking neighborhood of East London. Now, the Financial Times is reporting that Huram Butt was a well-known member of a British extremist Islamist group, and in fact, 6 of his neighbors, 6 in Barking, identified him as a zealous Islamist who was filmed praying in front of a black ISIS flag in Regent's Park in 2015, and the footage was later broadcast on Channel 4 in a documentary on British jihadis.
That should be a clue.
I think it's a clue.
Yeah.
I think it's a clue. So, needless to say, some of this and more is causing the election, which is on Thursday, the general election, to heat up.
Oh, was Theresa May the Home Secretary at that time?
She was Home Secretary from 2010 to 2016.
So, and the job of Home Secretary in the UK correlates to what in the United States?
Well, it's a very ambiguous title. There is no equivalent, but it encompasses, among other things, sort of homeland security. So, yes, it would encompass this. And she was responsible for police cuts.
Yeah, I understand she cut like 20,000 police officers off the
Yeah,
force.
20,000 police officers, 13%.
Right. She's a good conservative. That's what they do. They cut government.
Yeah, including armed police.
So does this mean that on the election's on Thursday, right?
The election's on Thursday. Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, is calling on her to resign. But he also said, well, there's an election on Thursday. That's the chance.
Yeah, he backed off on the call to resign, according to today's Guardian, and he said, there's no need for her to resign now. We have an election on Thursday. Let the people decide. Do you think that this is, typically when there's a terror attack and you have a rapid and efficient police response to it, it helps the conservatives who are in power. But it looks like this is hurting Theresa May.
This is hurting Theresa May. It really is, and in fact, even more than that, Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, said today, and he's Labour, of course, he said the cuts to police have been draconian. He said, over the last 7 years, we as a city have lost £600 million. That's $775 million from our budget. We have had to close police stations, sell police buildings, and we've lost thousands of police staff. That's bad, and that's going to get a lot of airtime.
Wow. And that was the direct responsibility of Theresa May?
Yes. Cut the police, yes.
Wow. Amazing.
So this is not
okay.
good.
So what else is going on in the world?
So we got that. Meantime, so 7 people killed in a knife and van attack in Britain. Meantime, in Orlando, Florida, a disgruntled former employee opened fire today inside a Florida awning factory, killing 5 workers before killing himself, authorities said.
So what was the motive for this?
Well, was a 45-year-old man who'd been fired in April and had previously accused of assaulting a co-worker, not believed to be any type of subversive or terrorist organization.
So this is he just went postal, basically.
Seems to have gone postal. Yeah.
Okay.
With a gun.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's the United States. I mean, if it had been Great Britain, it would have been with a knife, and he would have killed, 1 guy and injured 3.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so what else is going on?
A coalition of environmental groups, including the Natural Resources Defense Council and the Sierra Club, today sued the Trump administration, saying that it violated the law last week in pausing an Obama administration methane pollution rule for the oil and natural gas industry. Now, the lawsuit to save the Environmental Protection Agency's methane rule is the first court action related to climate change. So what they're doing is they say the EPA illegally skipped the required process when it put a 90-day halt on the standards to limit methane pollution, which, as you know, is about 80 times as powerful as carbon monoxide. And they're asking the Court of Appeals for D.C. Circuit to step in and block the EPA from halting the rule.
In other words, put the rule back into place and start requiring this is largely the fracking industry, isn't it, to get control of their methane emissions that are escaping into the air?
Right. They're saying, look, you've got to have the EPA said last week it was going to pause for 90 days the standards mandating pneumatic pumps at oil and natural gas well sites to reduce methane emissions, along with the certification standards for the pumps, while it thinks about whether to formally repeal the rule entirely. And these green groups are saying, no, you can't just pause the standards while you consider it.
Yeah.
So that lawsuit has been filed today.
Okay. Good luck with that. What else is up?
President Trump today in the East Room made his case for privatizing the nation's air traffic control system, arguing it will enhance safety and reduce wait times for consumers. He says the current system is stuck painfully in the past, and he wants to separate air traffic control operations from the FAA, something that U.S. airlines have long championed. Now, opponents say, well, look, first of all, it would require congressional approval. It's not at all sure that the Senate would give it. But opponents say this is going to give a lot of power to the big airlines.
How so? Because they'll own stock in the company that now runs the FAA?
No, it would be a non-profit actually, but the big airlines like it. They think it would lean towards the big airlines, and that the little airlines might sort of get edged out. It's complicated. Airlines like it. They say that the FAA's program to modernize the air traffic system is taking too long.
That's because Congress keeps cutting its funding.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be, this is also the first piece of his $100 trillion, as they call it, infrastructure plan that they're going to spend the whole week rolling out, something they're hoping to get positive news about in what looks like being quite a difficult week for the Trump White House.
But this isn't an infrastructure plan. This is a privatization plan.
Right, but
and privatization typically costs about 80% more than, when you take a government function that has to do with the natural monopoly, and obviously the air traffic control system is if anything is a natural monopoly, that's one of them. When you convert that from public ownership to private ownership, the costs typically go up about 80%.
Well, they're calling it part of their infrastructure plan.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Which is also going to include a number of things having to do with waterways and roads and bridges, and it's going to be spread over the next 5 days.
Anything they can put a toll booth on, right?
Well, those are your words.
Yeah. And what do you want to bet that, right now, if you fly an airplane, I'm a pilot. Right now, if you hop in a plane, you call up the FAA, it's it's Cherokee 4175 Tango, requesting permission to take off. Usually they would say, okay, taxi over to runway 30 and hold. And instead it's going to be, would you like to pay with credit card or PayPal?
There may be usage fees, is my understanding.
Yes, exactly. There you go. Victoria Jones with Talk Media News. Victoria, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Great talking with you. Happy Monday. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.
Welcome back. It's Free Speech TV's first day of our fundraising pledge membership, whatever you call it, drive. We do these several times a year. It's how we keep this network on the air and keep this show going and all those kind of things, mostly the network. And, we raise enough money to pay the bills for 3-4 months and have to come back and raise that money again. We're trying to raise $300,000 over the next 3 weeks. And today we need your help. And, this free speech TV is a really, really important part of the media landscape of this country. It's growing. It's growing in a really great way, and because of you. I mean, you've done a wonderful job of telling your friends and telling your neighbors. That is so important. And you know, every 3 or 4 months when we do a fund drive, kicking in a few bucks here and there, you know, that is so much appreciated. And it's what's kept Free Speech TV going and growing. And we hope to continue growing Free Speech TV. And, you know, just a lot of great stuff. The theme of this particular fund drive, at least this week, is Know Your Rights. And with a $60 contribution to Free Speech TV, you're going to get a pocket Constitution of the United States from the ACLU, not unlike one that I use here in the studio. It's a great little pocket Constitution. Everyone should have it. You can, you know, if you're ever bored, you can read it in about 15 minutes. And then we have these 2 Know Your Rights cards from the ACLU. One is Know Your Rights Demonstrations and Protests. And so it's things like, can controversial speech be restricted? No. Officials can impose restrictions such as requiring permits for large groups or limiting the loudness of amplifiers. Any restrictions must apply to all speech regardless of viewpoint. Where can protests take place? Do we need a permit to hold a protest? May I distribute literature without a permit? Can I picket on public sidewalks? Can the government charge fees to protesters? Can counter-demonstrators also protest? If somebody confronts you, a law enforcement officer or something, you got this card, you can say, here's the rules. You can read them. And then similarly for LGBTQ folks, this is You Have Rights, Public and Private Universities, Freedom of Expression, Sex Discrimination, Harassment in Restrooms. And so it's about Know Your Rights. So that's with a $60 contribution. With a $100 contribution, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book I wrote some years ago, but it's kind of a historical context of the United States. And I think you'll find it fascinating. It's absolutely apropos to what's going on today. And in fact, in some ways, it's scary and prescient about what's going on today with Trump and everything else. And it also blows up a lot of misconceptions about the founders that I think are worthy of blowing up, and puts to bed a bunch of right-wing canards. So it's a pretty important book, in my opinion. That's with a $100 gift. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. This is probably the best history of the United States that's ever been written. Howard Zinn has passed away, but his books are still with us, and this is an important one. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of The People's History of the U.S., a pocket Constitution, 2 of these Know Your Rights protest, or 2 Know Your Rights for LGBTQ folks, and a Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get the People's History of the U.S., Howard Zinn's book again, The Voices of the People's History, that's a paperback about Howard Zinn's book, a pocket Constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker, and that's with a $360 gift. That can also, you know, a $360 gift can also be given at $30 a month for a year, $240, $20 a month for a year, $120, $10 a month for a year, whatever you'd like. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. And, you know, we'll spend an hour and have a good time. About once a week, somebody comes through here who donated to Free Speech TV, made a $1,000 donation. I've had some fascinating conversations and met some extraordinary people. So that's what we're doing. We're starting the fund drive. Please call 877-378-8669 right now and make your contribution, 877-378-8669. And this is your opportunity to participate in Free Speech TV, to be part of Free Speech TV. You get some swag too, you know, you get some goodies, but principally, we want to kind of move from thinking about, oh, what are you going to get in terms of goodies, to what are we going to get and do in terms of programming on television that can change the world, that can save the world, that can change the world for the better. We're talking about really serious issues on this program and other programs here on this network. climate change, democracy, autocracy, the loss of democracy, oligarchy, net neutrality. I mean, all the things that, many of the things that literally don't get discussed on corporate news. So please call now, 877-378-8669. It's our first day. Let's have a bang up out of the box first day. Maybe we can even knock this thing 3 weeks down to 2. Please call now. Thank you so much.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I think that one of the absolute biggest stories that is going on right now in the world is the fact that Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Yemen have cut diplomatic ties with Qatar. And Qatar is the sponsor of Al Jazeera, who funds Al Jazeera. And in fact, the loss of oil revenue because of the decrease in the price of oil was one of the reasons, or at least was speculated to be one of the reasons why Al Jazeera sold off their U.S. operations. But Al Jazeera has a pretty good history. I mean, certainly you're going to get Qatar's point of view on things, but they have a pretty good history of straight-up journalism. And I would submit to you that Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Bahrain, the UAE, and Yemen are not interested in straight-up journalism, particularly if it reflects poorly on them. These countries are not democracies. They don't hold elections. Iran is only arguably, not even arguably, a democracy, but they do hold elections, and I mean, because the mullahs have the final say and all that kind of thing. But they do hold elections, and they just, 74% of the people just voted for a reformer in Iran. And for 2 weeks now, these 4 countries have been blocking Al Jazeera. I think that's what this is all about. And I think that, we need to be paying some fairly careful attention to this. We have radically destabilized the Middle East, and not just with George W. Bush's 2 stupid wars, and then, the overthrowing of Gaddafi. I think, in Libya during the Obama administration, I think it was a mistake. It just, it created a failed state. And then you've got, we basically wink, wink, nod, nod, overthrow the democratically elected government of Egypt. Yes, it was the Muslim Brotherhood. The question was, can they do an IRA? Can they, like the Irish Republican Army, can they become a political force and leave behind their violence? It looked like they were moving in that direction, although I don't pretend to be an Egypt expert. But, the net of all this is that the region is a mess. Apropos of my conversation with Michael Oren, Israel has real good reason, actually. If they have nuclear weapons, they've got a good reason to have them. And they've got some really nasty enemies in the region who we keep selling weapons to. And the more that region gets weaponized, and the more that region, the more population growth that you have in that region, it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. The temperature is going up and up and up, and literally as well. I mean, this is part of the problem, is that global warming forced over 1 million Syrian farmers off their farms into Damascus and into the cities of Syria, which then led to the Syrian crisis, because those people, and the government, cut back on Social Security, the equivalent of Social Security and food stamp payments, and fuel subsidies, and boom, you've got an explosion against the government. You've got the beginning of a civil war. And this didn't just happen in Syria. This is happening around that region. But this is a big deal. Qatar, where we have a huge military base, and that publishes the only internationally broadcast television out of the region,
is being isolated by these 4 countries that are all very, very close allies of the United States, as is Qatar. In the midst of this, we've got Donald Trump as president, who probably doesn't know where these countries are. Anyway, now we've got Trump kicking off the week with his infrastructure thing. Today he came out and he said, okay, you know, we're going to privatize the airports. On Wednesday, he's going to fly to Ohio and Kentucky. He's going to give a speech to touch on waterways in rural America. Yeah, hey, you could put toll roads on waterways, right? Sell them to Goldman Sachs, no problem. Gary Cohn is the point man on this, the head of the National Economic Council. He used to be the number 2 guy at Goldman Sachs, so that kind of makes sense. Congressional Democrats, Victoria Jones writes in her newsletter, Congressional Democrats who Trump is counting on to help get his plan through Congress have blasted the plan, as well as proposed 2018 budget cuts to transportation programs, and as this said that significantly more direct federal funding is needed. Well, you know, the Republicans are not going to go for that. That means more taxes on rich people. Oh, my God. We've got to cut taxes on rich people, right? I mean, you know, they're not rich enough. And then you saw what happened in Portland, Oregon. Louise and I were in Portland, you know, visiting our kids when this happened, what, a week and a half ago? 2 weeks ago? Yes, 2 weeks ago. The guy approached 2 young women, an African-American woman and a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, and started screaming racial slurs at them. 3 people came to their defense to try and stop him. He pulls out a knife. He kills 2 of them and wounds the 3rd. I mean, this is serious stuff. In Portland, you know, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler, he's got his hands full. And you had the so-called Trump supporters coming out to demonstrate. Now, what are they demonstrating? Apparently, their support for the guy who is throwing racial slurs at these 2 women. Or maybe just, hey, you know, let's all just love Donald Trump in Portland, by coincidence. And then you had the anti-fascist groups. You had there were several different groups, you know, anti-Trump groups who came together. And this is remarkable. Stuart Rhodes, a leader of the right-wing Oath Keepers militia, said that members of his group provided security for the Trump rally at the request of the local GOP chairman. Really? The Republican Party is reaching out to a paramilitary group unaffiliated with the government to provide security? And then, you know, of course, Scott Pruitt. Oh, my God, don't even get me started. Scott Pruitt refused to say whether he still believe, and here, this is from Victoria. NBC host Chuck Todd pressed Pruitt on whether he still believes that carbon dioxide is not the primary driver of climate change, a belief directly at odds with the overwhelming scientific consensus. I didn't say that. I said it's a cause, Pruitt said. Primary, Todd said. It's a cause of many, Pruitt said. Right. This guy is just a complete toady and shill for the fossil fuel industry. And he's running the EPA now. Wallace and George Stephanopoulos each pressed Pruitt 4 times about whether Trump believed in climate change. Pruitt says, climate's always changing. Right. Right. This week, Comey is going to testify apparently on Thursday. On Wednesday, there's going to be other congressional testimony in this whole investigation into whether the Trump administration or the Trump campaign was colluding with either the Russian government or whether they were going through groups like, you know, Paul Manafort hiring Russian hackers, or whether, as President Putin suggested to Megyn Kelly, it was, you know, just somebody else trying to pretend to be Russians. Who knows? But there's some interesting testimony coming, and I am very hopeful that there is a good, solid, independent investigation into this that, finds out exactly what happened, who did what. I mean, we need to get to the bottom of this. This is not good for us. It's not good for Russia. It's not good for the Democratic Party. It's not good for the Republican Party. It's not good for anybody to have these kind of questions. It's not good for future elections.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We might also want to look into the corruption of our elections by right-wing billionaires, although you won't hear much discussion of that. Perfect. And welcome back. Gloria in Shannon, North Carolina. Hey, Gloria, what's on your mind today? Thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
I've held on patiently because I want to get in on that. The guy back in your first hour that spoke about the One America News. I accidentally run across them the other night, flipping channels, and I have never in my life seen such. They are totally right wing. I got on the internet and looked up the ownership. It says the Herring family, Herring, Herring family is the owners. And Tom, they don't have any commercials, but the one PSA that I looked at that I could not stomach was their history lesson on the Russians fighting side by side with America in such places as the Civil War, World War I, World War II, and so forth and so on. This was the history lesson they laid out, complete with pictures and everything.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the Civil War, but Russia arguably won World War II. I mean, we certainly helped, but they lost, I think, 20 million soldiers, 20 million people. I mean, their losses were massive during World War II, and they suffered terribly and they fought like crazy. Arguably, if either us or the Russians had pulled out, World War II might have been lost, but they were our allies in that. I frankly don't know about Civil War or World War I, but are you saying that you were offended by a PSA that was basically saying nice things about Russia?
It was. They started with the Civil War. The Russians fought side by side during the Civil War, and so forth and so on. Yeah. And then another thing with the Sinclair group, they bought up a lot of the stations, and one of the stations that we get here on DirecTV is Boris Epstein does a little tidbit every day talking about Russia and how great Russia is and so forth and so on. And this is locally. He does this in local areas every day.
You know where that's coming from, Gloria? The argument that is being made on the right is Russia is a predominantly white country and a predominantly Christian country. And therefore, white Christians in the United States should be aligning themselves with white Christians in Russia. Now, I personally think that Russia's it's the second largest nuclear power in the world. They're a substantial force. It's one of the largest physical countries in the world. It's got a huge population and a lot of resources. That we should have good relations with Russia. I would like to see that. But the sales pitch that's being made from the hard right in the United States has more to do with race and religion than anything else.
It's ridiculous. It's scary. And on this one America news station, they don't do anything. Any stories that all the stories are right wing, are GOP backed.
Yeah, they're trying to out Fox News, and they probably will. I mean, it's Fox News's days may be over. Gloria, thank you for the call, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back.
there, I'm Marie with Free Speech TV. Your support, whether through giving donations, volunteering, or spreading the word about Free Speech TV, has made it possible for the only independent progressive news network to exist. And for that, I want to say thank you. Now you can give to the network powered by the people by donating an unwanted or used vehicle through our Vehicles of Change program. If you have an old car, RV, or even a motorcycle, Free Speech TV can use it to grow and thrive. You can make a bigger difference in supporting Free Speech TV by giving an old car. It's a great way to support the network without having to dig into your bank account. Just call 877-378-8669 and ask for more information about Vehicles of Change. Again, the number to call is 877-378-8669. If it has a VIN, we'll take it in. Thank you.
I'm Nina Turner, and you're watching Free Speech TV.
You and Thomas in Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Thomas, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call. I was thinking about what Trump was talking about as far as his responsibility for the people of Pennsylvania and not Paris. And what I was thinking that if you really want to go green, why don't he invest in Pennsylvania as far as, let's say, the what you call it, oh my God, solar panels.
Yeah, why don't they solarize Pittsburgh?
Let them have the piece of the action, because what will happen that the people in Pittsburgh, without getting that type of investment, will end up going to Home Depot, going to Lowe's, and getting their solar panels, and the box will say "Made in China."
Right.
And then the country will be laughing, and then those countries will be laughing at us because he really should have put an investment in if he really cares about it.
Yeah. Well, and Ivanka's still making her stuff in sweatshops in China, and Donald is still making his stuff in China. It's all hypocrisy, Thomas. This is, it was a sales pitch to the rubes to get an administration that could do the will of the hard right billionaires and the big transnational corporations. It's really just that simple. And it's not just happening in the United States, by the way, but it's happening here pretty aggressively, with the complicity of the United States Supreme Court, tragically. Thomas, I got to move along, but your point is brilliant. Thank you. Donald in Aurora, Illinois. Hey, Donald, what's up?
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Good.
I would get so fed up with all this stuff going on, especially with the brunt of the problems that are thrown at our allies over there in Europe. What really kills me about this whole system, this whole thing about the refugees, we started the war and created this problem in the Middle East, and we done it under the fake news of Bush and Cheney. They got us into this mess and opened up this Pandora's box. We escalated it, and we never tried to ever get out of it, and we killed thousands of people and created all these refugees, which was accepted mostly by our allies in Europe, opening up their arms to these people. And yet we slammed the doors on the very people that in these countries that we created problems for them, and we won't let them into this country. I don't see the fairness in that, and no Democrat is calling it the way it is. Why don't we tell them from the beginning how this crap got started and start mentioning names and the party responsible for this?
Yeah, like George Bush, Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, the Republican Party, Paul Bremer, the Libertarian Idea, Paul Wolfowitz, John Yoo, Jay Bybee. I mean, there's no shortage of malefactors here. Donald, I completely agree with you. Very well said. Thank you. Bobby in Carmel, New York. Hey, Bobby, what's up?
Yeah, hi. You had the caller on before, and you had the gentleman talking about Israel and Palestine.
Yeah, Michael Oren. By the way, he's got a piece in today's New York Times that I failed to promote on the air, and I should have. Just as a courtesy to him, it's worth reading. It's a nice piece on the 6-Day War.
Yeah, yes, and it's very frustrating to those of us who are irreligious and who like to believe in, we can get along just because we're human beings and we share that common experience and we don't need magic books to tell us what to do. And just to see these people in the 21st century basically carrying out prehistoric things, just to dehumanize each other, is so frustrating and so bizarre. And it's happening in this country, which was, in theory, was supposed to be a defense against that. We were supposed to separate from religion. And your rights end at the end of your nose. You can't impose what you think. You're not supposed to impose what you think in your heart or whatever on other people and force them to do it. And what Israel's doing is they've become the bully. They do have nuclear weapons. They do have an incredibly efficient and well-trained and armed military. And
well, we don't know if they have nuclear weapons, but I think it's conventional wisdom. I think there's a broad belief. And it may be, Saddam Hussein wanted everybody to think he had nuclear weapons, or something like that, simply to scare off the people around him. It's possible Israel doesn't have them and they're trying to scare people. Whatever the case, they are in a region where there's a lot of people who want to destroy them. And you're right. Much of this is being fueled by bizarrely interpreted religious doctrines, particularly the bizarrely interpreted Wahhabist Muslim doctrine that is being actively and aggressively supported by our good buddies in Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. And people say, well, I'm against terrorism, yet they're driving an SUV. Well, where do you think, when you're pouring all that gasoline into your car,
right?
What are you doing? You're supporting terrorism.
Yeah, there you go. I totally agree. Bobby, well said. Thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for listening to SiriusXM. We'll be back. We're coming up on 28 minutes past the hour. More of your calls, my thoughts, and the news of the day right after this. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
The White House just announced, we're not vetting Trump's tweets. CYA anybody? We'll be back. Welcome back. It's Free Speech TV's first day of our fundraising pledge membership, whatever you call it, drive. We do these several times a year. It's how we keep this network on the air and keep this show going and all those kind of things, mostly the network. And, we raise enough money to pay the bills for 3-4 months and have to come back and raise that money again. We're trying to raise $300,000 over the next 3 weeks. And today we need your help. And, this Free Speech TV is a really, really important part of the media landscape of this country. It's growing. It's growing in a really great way. And because of you. You've done a wonderful job of telling your friends and telling your neighbors. That is so important. And every 3 or 4 months when we do a fund drive, kicking in a few bucks here and there, that is so much appreciated. And it's what's kept Free Speech TV going and growing. And we hope to continue growing Free Speech TV. And, just a lot of great stuff. The theme of this particular fund drive, at least this week, is Know Your Rights. And with a $60 contribution to Free Speech TV, you're going to get a pocket constitution of the United States from the ACLU, not unlike one that I use here in the studio. It's a great little pocket constitution. Everyone should have it. You can, if you're ever bored, you can read it in about 15 minutes. And then we have these 2 Know Your Rights cards from the ACLU. One is Know Your Rights Demonstrations and Protests. And so it's things like, can controversial speech be restricted? No. Officials can impose restrictions such as requiring permits for large groups or limiting the loudness of amplifiers. Any restrictions must apply to all speech regardless of viewpoint. Where can protests take place? Do we need a permit to hold a protest? May I distribute literature without a permit? Can I picket on public sidewalks? Can the government charge fees to protesters? Can counter demonstrators also protest?
If somebody confronts you, a law enforcement officer or something, you got this card, you can say, here's the rules. You can read them. And then similarly for LGBTQ folks, this is you have rights, public and private universities, freedom of expression, sex discrimination, harassment in restrooms. And so it's about know your rights. So that's with a $60 contribution. With a $100 contribution, you get a copy of my book, What Would Jefferson Do? This is a book I wrote some years ago, but it's a kind of a historical context of the United States. And I think you'll find it fascinating. It's absolutely apropos to what's going on today. And in fact, in some ways, it's scary and prescient about what's going on today with Trump and everything else. And it also blows up a lot of misconceptions about the founders that I think are worthy of blowing up, and puts to bed a bunch of right-wing canards. So it's a pretty important book, in my opinion. That's with a $100 gift. With a $120 gift, you get a copy of Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. This is probably the best history of the United States that's ever been written. Howard Zinn has passed away, but his books are still with us, and this is an important one. With a $240 gift, you get a copy of The People's History of the U.S., a pocket constitution, 2 of these Know Your Rights at protest, or 2 Know Your Rights for LGBTQ folks, and a Free Speech TV sticker. With a $360 gift, you get the People's History of the U.S., Howard Zinn's book again, The Voices of the People's History, that's a paperback about Howard Zinn's book, a pocket constitution, the Free Speech TV sticker, and that's with a $360 gift. That can also, a $360 gift can also be given at $30 a month for a year, $240, $20 a month for a year, $120, $10 a month for a year, whatever you'd like. And with a $1,000 gift, come to Washington, D.C., and I'll take you to lunch. And, we'll spend an hour and have a good time. About once a week, somebody comes through here who donated to Free Speech TV, made a $1,000 donation. I've had some fascinating conversations and met some extraordinary people. So that's what we're doing. We're starting the fund drive. Please call 877-378-8669 right now and make your contribution, 877-378-8669. And this is your opportunity to participate in Free Speech TV, to be part of Free Speech TV. You get some swag too, you get some goodies, but principally, we want to kind of move from thinking about, what are you going to get in terms of goodies, to what are we going to get and do in terms of programming on television that can change the world, that can save the world, that can change the world for the better. We're talking about really serious issues on this program and other programs here on this network: climate change, democracy, autocracy, the loss of democracy, oligarchy, net neutrality. I mean, many of the things that literally don't get discussed on corporate news. So please call now, 877-378-8669. It's our first day. Let's have a bang-up, out-of-the-box first day. Maybe we can even knock this thing 3 weeks down to 2. Please call now. Thank you so much.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the important stories we cover and the issues we care about are at HartmannReport.com. Members of our community can comment and join the conversation.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, what a day. Marta in Big Bear Lake, California. Hey, Marta, you want to talk about Israel and Palestine?
Yes, I just want to ask, I know you have the most informed and intelligent listeners. I want to suggest that, we stop the sniping and basically the exaggerations and talking points and myths. The only way to do that is to actually look at the history and do our own research. So everything I've learned about Palestine and Israel was from Jewish historians such as Ilan Pappé, who is an Israeli, Miko Peled, who's whose grandfather signed the Constitution, and at the beginning of the founding of Israel, and his father was a general, famous general in the '67 war. You had Max Blumenthal, who is Jewish, on Conversations with Great Minds. Jewish Voice for Peace is a great source. And then finally, there are many Jewish Israeli soldiers who are speaking out about the horrors that they took part in and inflicted against, against the Palestinians. So
yeah, I would also add, if you want direct Israeli sources, Haaretz is a great newspaper. It's the second largest newspaper in Israel. It's progressive, and there is more of a debate in Israel about what to do with the settlements and the Palestinians and two state, one state, all this kind of stuff. There is a more honest, open, and aggressive, active debate in Israel than there is in the United States. In the United States, you try to have this conversation, you get shut down.
Well, it's changing because we have people whose parents survived the Holocaust, who went to Israel to live, who grew up in Israel, and who are speaking out. And I just don't want to get into the inflammatory, talking points. And basically, the people that I'm talking about want a democratic Israel. I believe most want one nation because basically a Palestinian state is completely impossible at this point. It's not viable because of the settlements but once again, I think rather.
But that if you're gonna, this is the problem that Israel's facing, Marta, is that if they were to say, okay, we're going to take all of these, we're going to take the entire country and just make everybody a citizen. Suddenly, you have a Jewish minority in a Jewish state. That doesn't work.
Yeah, once again, I didn't want to, because I know it's such a long argument. And, I believe that, like Jewish Voice for Peace, we are totally in support of human rights and, for Israelis. And I just, the woman that I heard was so inflammatory, and I just didn't want to get into the exact, the talking points, and I don't want to get into an argument or a debate. I would just suggest that your listeners are so intelligent that we listen to Israelis and, Jewish Voice for Peace and the soldiers who have been in there in the past couple of years that are just so traumatized by what they did. Just, ask your listeners to do their own research from actual Jewish Israelis and Max Blumenthal, who, grew up.
Well said, Marta. And that's basically what you're describing is the Israeli left. J Street also is another, it's a great organization. J Street was created in the United States basically to push back against AIPAC. AIPAC is sort of the right-wing American Israeli Political Action Committee, I think is what AIPAC stands for. J Street was a progressive organization that advocates for Israel and does a very good job of it, but doesn't always agree with Mr. Netanyahu and the right-wingers in the Israeli government. So, yeah, I agree with you. I would not only encourage people to do their own homework, I would encourage people to go to Israel and travel around the country, see what's going on there, get a sense of it. It's a beautiful country and, with amazing heritage. And, if you have any Jewish, Christian, or Islamic roots, I mean, it's like the Holy of Holies. And, just go see for yourself. Marta, thank you so much for a rational voice. I appreciate it. Cynthia in the Villages, Florida. Hey, Cynthia, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I'd just like to say that Michael Oren tried very hard to justify his points, but I really appreciate that you had the courage to do something that most of our politicians won't do, and that is give another side of the Israeli-Palestinian situation. We have a country that U.S. taxpayers give billions of dollars to, but it seems as if they're not going to stop until they destroy Iran. And unfortunately, our government may be complicit in this tragedy. So there are thousands of Jewish people who are against what's happening in Israel with the Palestinians. So I think it's time that another tactic be employed that tries to solve this situation. But finally, I really appreciate, more than you know, and other people do too, that you have had the courage to give another side. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cynthia. I mean, let's acknowledge Michael Oren for having the courage to come on this program too, and you know, I genuinely am kind of bummed out that he got cut off by the hard break that we hit, but you know, that's radio. Cynthia, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you. Johnny in Lamarck, Texas. Hey, Johnny, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Good program as always.
Thank you.
Never disappointed. I want to respond to the woman who almost an hour ago made a rabid defense of Israel, right or wrong, and an attempt to somehow discredit your position and our position. There's two qualities about that call that bother me. I see a similarity in that call with someone like Donald Trump and most other Repo Party politicians who have this persecution complex. Donald Trump said with such surety, to use his word, that he's the most abused or persecuted politician in U.S. history. Never mind Abraham Lincoln or JFK or RFK.
Right.
Or, Or what about this war on Christmas or our plans to take away everybody's guns? All these nonsensical points. How about some real history involved here? What about Rachel Corrie on the eve of war making in Iraq by the United States in early of 2003 when she was crushed to death by an Israeli bulldozer made by the United States, which, by the way, that's part of the financial aid that we give to them year after year, decade after decade.
Yeah, she was defending a Palestinian home, as I recall.
Yeah, defending a Palestinian home. And Israel, she wants to portray Israel as this poor little teeny tiny country who's surrounded by enemies and wants to just exterminate.
Well, there is some reality to that. I mean, you know, Israel, you know, I think it was a noble idea. I think, you know, there's a lot of really good people there. It is a democracy in the Middle East. There's a lot to say for Israel. I support Israel. I support Israel's right to exist. I think that the right-wing leadership that they've had, you know, by and large for the last 20 years, has been leading them on a path that has particularly with the settlements, allowing the settlements to just metastasize all across the West Bank, has put them in a situation where there basically are no longer any good options. And I think, you know, if they had taken a more rational approach back in the 70s and 80s, that there would be, you know, more positive options. But, you know, right now, I mean, even the whole two-state solution thing is you know.
Well, before I hang up, I just wanted to point out, to remind people like that woman, is that the way Israel was born was not too dissimilar to the way the United States was born. We came over here and we kicked out a bunch of other people and then took over the place. And that is wrong, and it has to be fixed. And you don't fix it by dividing their land up, what tiny land you give them, with concrete walls and bulldozing their homes.
Well, that's the problem that they have is that we did it by killing people. I mean, Andrew Jackson literally and pretty much everybody before him literally, you know, went out and murdered as many Indians as possible. When Israel was formed, there was no effort to kill anybody, to the best of my knowledge. There was displacement. Some of it was probably, you know, people probably resisted violently, but I'm not a scholar of the early history there, other than, you know, I think it was Menachem Begin and the King David blowing up the King David Hotel and all that stuff. But you know, they allowed the indigenous people of the region to continue to live, and that has. But they didn't solve the problem right off the beginning of, you know, giving them a life, essentially, as it were, you know, giving them a place. And so now, you know, the largest Palestinian population, I think, in the Middle East is in Jordan right now. Jordan has become essentially Palestine, and Israel and Jordan are you know, two of the relatively stable countries in the Middle East. But this entire mess is destabilizing everything, and it's just not a healthy thing. It's not a good thing. And, you know, I don't have an easy answer. I honestly don't. And it's why I don't It's why I don't endorse the divestment, the BDS movement. I understand it, but I think that this is way too complex to simply say, okay, those are the bad guys, let's punish them. There's plenty of blame to go around. Johnny, thank you for the call. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls. Welcome back. Noel in Riverside, California. Hey, Noel, what's up? Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for having it. On the Israeli matter, there is a short series of programs. They're only about 25 minutes long. It's called Against All Odds, and it's about the different wars in Israel where there were outright miracles documented. Like, just say for one, the Israelis were trapped and they had to get from here to there because the tanks were coming toward them, and they knew there was mines in this one area, landmines, and so they had to get down their hands and knees and start digging them out to get across this. And all of a sudden, the sky went dark, the moon went dark, and this breeze came up and blew all the sand away so they could see each landmine and get through there to safety. It was stuff like that happened. So when I hear people say, oh, that's a magic book and fairy tales and this and that, it's not really. There's something there. There is a God. There is the supernatural is there. Things like that just don't happen out of nowhere. And also, some people, when they talk about Christians, they talk about the Crusades and this and that. Christianity does not go along with hatred. That's kind of like anti that. Christianity, true Christianity is love. Jesus hanging on the cross said, forgive them. They know not what they do. Anybody that comes in the name of hate for anybody, any other race, any religion, any person, can't be called a Christian. That does not make sense. And I just wanted to get that straight because so many people lump Christianity in with the Crusades and fighting and the right wing, which I think a lot of them are Satanists, like Hitler and his brood was. They're not, in the name of Jesus. They're in the name of hate, which is the devil. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. If you want to talk about the name of hate in a religious context, what would you have to say about white supremacists like the guy who was screaming obscenities at the black woman and the woman wearing the hijab in Portland and then murdered two people and knifed a third one?
I say they're full of hate. That any Trump supporters, I'd like to know what they think Trump is doing for them, beside the racist idea that they hate something.
I think they think that Trump has finally somebody has stood up for the white people, particularly after we had a black president, and they want their white privilege back. They've really not lost it, but they want more of their white privilege. They want and I think that whether you want to view it in an existential context, in a religious context, or in a philosophical context, I think it's evil. And it's just white supremacy and the practices of these people, and many of them now followers of Donald Trump. He has become their Pied Piper. It's evil, and whether he is himself, I don't know. I believe that some of the people around him are, but this is spiritual warfare. It really is. Noel, thanks for the call. Good to hear from you. We'll be back. It's coming up on 11 minutes before the hour. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Leon in Chicago. Hey, Leon, what's up?
Yeah. Hi, Tom. I was listening with interest on the topic of Israel and our relationship with them, and I traveled there 5 times on business in the 1980s and 1990s, enjoyed myself. But I saw firsthand how the Palestinians, the Arabs, are treated like worse than second-class citizens. But I think what you should draw their attention to is in 1967, the USS Liberty. I don't know if you know that story.
Yeah, James Bamford wrote a book, and there's an entire chapter in the book. I forget the title of the book. I'm sorry. His first book was Puzzle Palace. This was his second. And that's how I learned about it, is I read his book and the entire chapter about the USS Liberty, how this was a U.S. spy ship. It was off the coast of Gaza. Apparently, there was a slaughter going on of Palestinians by Israelis. And I think it was Netanyahu, wasn't it?
That goes back to far for Netanyahu. This was 1967, June the 6th, I think
Yeah,
it was.
okay. Then it was,
I believe the story
it was a guy who ended up, I thought, as the Israeli prime minister, who was ordering the slaughter, and then ordered the planes to attack the USS Liberty, which killed, what, 37 American soldiers, as I recall, or sailors?
A lot more, and we did nothing. We kept it quiet for years and years.
Oh, yeah.
I think what the real issue was is that the Six-Day War, that Israel started it and blamed Egypt, told the world Egypt started it, and our spy ship knew the truth. And they were trying to sink the ship so the truth would not get out.
Wait a minute, the USS Liberty had to do with the Six-Day War?
I think it was in 1967, yeah. It was in June 1967. Was that when Moshe Dayan became,
I honestly don't know. I'm not I don't have that timeline fixed in my brain. I'm sorry.
The war when they took over Jerusalem. And they were telling the world that Egypt started the war, okay, and our spy ship was gathering intelligence, and we knew that no, Israel started the war.
Well, and, I don't know that that's a fact, and I'm not sure that Bamford asserted that in his book. I think his main assertion was that the Israelis, shot up our intelligence ship, killed a bunch of Americans, and we hid it because we didn't want to hurt our relationship with Israel, and this was not a good thing.
The Chicago Tribune did a great article on it about 10 or 15 years ago. The first time I had ever seen it put in writing, and evidently, when Johnson was told, Lyndon Johnson, this was happening, he ordered, there was an aircraft carrier a few hundred miles from there, and they ordered that the American flyers go in to intercept the Israeli Air Force and chase them back to Israel. And Robert McNamara came in and said, are you going to risk relationships with one of our best allies over a few dead sailors? And that was in the Chicago Tribune article.
Wow.
And Johnson backed off.
Yeah, it's been probably 15 years since I read Bamford's book, but I am familiar with what happened with the USS Liberty, and it's one of those stories that most people are completely unaware of. Leon, thanks for the call, and thanks for listening to WCPT. Linda in California City, California. Hey, Linda, what's up?
Hi. I'll make it quick. I know we don't have much time. First, thank you for doing everything you do.
My pleasure.
You had a caller earlier, gentleman who felt that no white Americans had suffered from the aftermath of slavery or had their lives affected. Certainly, none of us had the depth of suffering, multi-generational suffering that has been inflicted on African Americans. But there are groups of us that he doesn't know about. I grew up in the Jim Crow South. And when I was in my mid-teens, I realized how horrible it was. I was born into a family that had marinated in the worship of glorification of the old South for generations. It was really sick. And I saw it and joined the civil rights movement in the early 60s. I was utterly disowned.
Yeah, that immediately put a target on your back.
Pardon me?
That back in the 60s, a white person joining the civil rights movement put a target on their back real quick.
Oh, yeah. And I'm in my mid-70s now, and I was utterly disowned. And my father died in 2006, and we hadn't spoken for decades. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but the entire trajectory of my life was changed by it. And I'm not the only one. There are other factors about this complicated story and other people, groups of people, that this gentleman's not aware of. Yeah. And I'd like him to broaden his thinking a little bit and realize that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Linda. And, you know, I think it's Thursday or Friday of this week is the anniversary of the Loving versus Virginia Supreme Court case where a white man and a black woman were married in Virginia, and the miscegenation laws that were in 41 states made it illegal for people for interracial marriage. They took it to the Supreme Court.
I have a racially mixed family. I'm well aware of it.
Yeah, okay. And the Supreme Court, this was the first time the phrase white supremacy had ever been used in a Supreme Court decision. And I think it was Brennan who wrote the decision, and he said this is, you know, these laws, these anti-miscegenation laws, are clear attempts to extend white supremacy in the United States, and they are illegal. And the Supreme Court struck them down. And, you know, whichever day of the week it is that Loving comes up. There was an interesting piece about it in the New York Times yesterday with a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Loving, an appropriate name, I suppose. But it was a fascinating picture from 1950s or 1960s, I guess it was, 65, I want to say, but I don't remember what year actually Loving happened. But Linda, thank you for sharing your story with us. You're absolutely right. There were and continue to be, and always have been. I mean, all the way back to the founding of the Republic. Some white people who fought, some more than others, some more aggressively than others, on behalf of racial equality. Linda, thank you for the call. Thank you all for being with us today. Great to be back. I don't plan on doing any traveling for quite a while, at least until my daughter's wedding in September. So until then, you're stuck with me. So thanks so much for being with us. Have a great afternoon. We'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. Get out there, get active, tag your too.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com.
Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242
or visit tomsbeets.com.